Welcome to Earthology, a place where the earth itself speaks, softly, patiently, through the language of stone and time. Beneath every step you take lies another world. Cities turn to dust, rivers turn to sand, dreams folded into the silence of soil. Every civilization believes it will last forever, but the earth remembers otherwise. Tonight, we journey downward, through forgotten kingdoms and sunken coasts, through jungles that swallowed empires and deserts that drowned their walls in wind. We will listen to the ground and the stories it keeps hidden beneath our feet. Because the planet forgets nothing. It only buries its memories in silence, waiting for us to uncover them. This is 100 forgotten civilizations beneath our feet, and our descent begins now. Beneath every city, there is another one. Beneath every field, the bones of something that once breathed. The earth forgets nothing. It only buries its memories in silence. If you listen closely, the wind still carries fragments of old languages, syllables once spoken by firelight, drifting across centuries of dust. The rain that falls tonight will one day become stone, pressing into the fossils of our streets, our walls, our names. We walk on history every day, though we seldom feel it. The ground beneath us is not merely dirt. It is a vast library, each layer a chapter in the story of those who came before. Archaeologists call this the stratigraphy of time, sediment upon sediment, civilization upon civilization. In some places, the past lies only a few feet below. In others, it rests hundreds of meters deep, compacted into quiet permanence. When we dig, we do not disturb the earth. We awaken it. We peel back the layers of its sleep and reveal the faces it once wore. The earth remembers its first builders, those who shaped stone not for conquest, but for meaning. Long before history began to write itself, hands were already carving memory into rock. At Göbekli Tepe, in the dry hills of southern Turkey, great pillars stand in circles beneath the wind. They were raised 12,000 years ago, long before the wheel, before writing, before cities. Each monolith bears the forms of animals, foxes, cranes, lions, etched in perfect stillness. The people who built them lived as hunters, yet their monuments suggest a civilization of spirit. They were not yet farmers, yet they built temples that outlasted kings. When archaeologists uncovered the site, they realized that the story of civilization was older and stranger than anyone had imagined. It was as if the dawn of humanity had begun not with tools or trade, but with reverence. Across the earth, similar whispers rise from the ground. At Nabda Playa, in the Egyptian desert, ancient people aligned stones to mark the solstices, the first calendars carved into the skin of the world. Beneath the shifting dunes of the Sahara, the echoes of lakes and rivers still pulse beneath the sand, where human life once flourished before the desert swallowed its children whole. Sand, after all, is the slowest water. It drowns cities grain by grain. In Jericho, one of the oldest continually inhabited cities on earth, the remnants of ancient walls rise from layers of dust, each wall built upon the ruins of another. The first stones were laid nearly 10,000 years ago, when the last glaciers still lingered on distant mountains, and the air carried the chill of a vanishing ice age. At Margar, on the plains of what is now Pakistan, archaeologists found evidence of an early culture that cultivated wheat and barley long before the cities of Mesopotamia were born. They made pottery, buried their dead with care, and carved tiny ornaments, small acts of beauty preserved by the patience of the soil. In Japan, the Jomon culture left behind pottery older than any known civilization. Vessels marked with cord-like impressions, fragments of a society that lived close to the sea and the forest-shaping art long before the rise of dynasties. And on the shores of the Black Sea, in Bulgaria's Varna necropolis, graves shimmered with gold, some of the oldest worked gold in human history. Yet the wealth buried there was not a symbol of empire. It was ritual, remembrance, and offering to time itself. Each of these places, Göbekli Tepe, Nabta Playa, Jericho, Mehrgar, Roman, Varna, speaks of beginnings. Not beginnings of nations, but of awareness. They remind us that civilization is not a sudden spark, but a slow dawn, one that rises unevenly across the world. Carol, in the Supe Valley of Peru, stands as one of the earliest cities of the Americas. Built around 2600 BCE, its pyramids rise like weathered waves from the desert. There were no weapons found there, no evidence of war, only instruments, flutes carved from condor bones, resonating with the music of a peaceful people. What binds these early builders together is not their architecture or power, but their silence. They left behind no words, only stones and patterns. Yet from those stones, we can still read the rhythm of their hearts. Before language carved symbols into stone, humanity carved the sky, aligning temples and mounds to constellations we no longer see. The earliest civilizations were not merely architects of cities, but interpreters of the cosmos. Their monuments pointed not just to the heavens, but to the cyclical breath of the planet, solstices, floods, migrations, stars. The Earth remembers these alignments because it shares them. The same gravity that moves the tides moves the human pulse. The same rhythms that turn the seasons once turned the hands that raised the stones. Over thousands of years, rivers shifted, mountains rose, and valleys deepened. The first builders faded into myth. Yet their memory did not vanish. It was folded gently into the soil, carried forward in the shape of later civilizations. The Sumerians of Mesopotamia, who built the first true cities. The Egyptians who aligned pyramids to the path of Orion. The Harappans, whose grid-like streets still sleep beneath the deserts of Sind and Punjab. All of them inherited something ancient, something wordless, from those who came before. Civilization is not a ladder, rising upward step by step. It is a circle, a pattern repeated through time. Each culture rises, flowers, and falls, leaving seeds that take root in distant soil. When we study ruins, we often ask how they were built, or why they were abandoned. But perhaps the deeper question is, what were they for? What longing did they serve? Maybe the answer lies not in the ruins themselves, but in the silence around them. For all the tools, the cities, the walls, the truest mark of civilization may be the desire to remember, to be remembered, to speak across the ages, even when language itself has turned to dust. That is why the earth remembers, because we asked it to. Every stone we raised, every grave we dug, every pattern we carved into the land was a whisper to time. Do not forget us. And time, being infinite, has obeyed. If you were to sink your hand into the soil anywhere on earth, in a garden, a desert, a riverbank, you would touch the dust of empires. Tiny fragments of pottery, bone, pollen, and ash. The planet's memory is not stored in words or archives, but in texture, the compressed remains of 1 billion unrecorded lives. In that soil are traces of the first hearths ever lit, the first seeds ever sown, the first pigments mixed to paint the inside of a cave. And beneath them, still deeper, lie the unshaped stones, the bones of Earth itself, older than every dream humanity has ever dreamed. We often think of time as distance, something long gone, unreachable. But time is not far away. It is right beneath us, waiting. Every step we take presses the future into the past, and the past into the present, binding all moments together in the patience of stone. The earth remembers because it is memory, layered, quiet, eternal. And as we continue our descent, we will find that what lies beneath us is not simply ruin, but revelation. Because to uncover the forgotten civilizations of the world is not to look backward, it is to listen downward, to hear the soft breathing of time beneath our feet. And so, when we look upon these ruins, these circles of stone and fragments of clay, we are not just studying the past. We are listening to the planet remembering itself. Every civilization that has ever lived has left a faint fingerprint on the world's skin. A shape in the land, a shimmer in the soil, a story in the sediment of a riverbed. Sometimes the earth speaks through erosion, through the slow unveiling of what was once hidden. Other times it keeps its silence, holding the secrets of those who came before us in a patience beyond measure. For the earth does not rush. It turns, it folds, it waits. Civilizations rise, collapse, and are buried again. And still the ground remains, gathering all that we are and all that we will be into its quiet, endless memory. Because in the end, everything built by human hands returns softly to the soil. The desert is a slow and patient sculptor. It erases not with fury, but with breath, a single grain of sand at a time. What the ocean buries in water, the desert buries in silence. Across North Africa and the Arabian Peninsula, entire worlds once thrived where only dunes now wander. Beneath the endless gold of the Sahara, beneath the parched flats of Arabia, the bones of forgotten kingdoms sleep. Their roads are gone, their gardens lost, their names half remembered in myth. Yet traces of them remain, faint outlines seen only from the sky, revealed by the light of modern satellites. The desert was not always dry. Once the Sahara was green, a vast savanna of rivers, forests, and lakes. Between 10,000 and 5,000 years ago, monsoon rains swept northward, feeding crocodiles, hippos, and people who lived beside ancient watercourses, now buried beneath dunes. This was the African humid period, when the desert we know today was alive with life. Archaeologists and geologists have traced these vanished rivers through radar and LiDAR, finding their paths ghosting across the landscape, channels that once carried trade, song, and migration. Along these forgotten shores, early humans built stone circles, villages, and sacred enclosures. When the rains retreated, the people followed the water, leaving behind monuments to a time when the desert still dreamed of being a sea. In Oman's southern wilderness, explorers once sought a city called Uber, the Iram of the Pillars, a place the Quran describes as a mighty settlement punished by the sands. For centuries, it was thought to be legend. But in 1992, satellite imaging and archaeological digs revealed the ruins of an ancient trading hub near Shisar, at the edge of the empty quarter. Beneath collapsed limestone caverns lay the remains of towers and fortifications, evidence of a caravan city that controlled the frankincense trade thousands of years ago. Whether it was truly Iram or another city altogether, no one can say for certain. But its story reminds us that myth often grows from the roots of truth. The desert remembers every lost traveler, even those who walked only through legend. Far to the west, beneath the heat of Libya and Chad, another hidden civilization left its mark. The Garamantes, once dismissed as a minor tribe, are now known to have built one of the most advanced societies of ancient Africa. Centered in the Fezzan region of the Central Sahara, they flourished between 500 BCE and 400 CE. They constructed underground irrigation systems, fogaras, to draw fossil water from deep aquifers, feeding gardens in the middle of the desert. From above, their settlements appear as faint geometric ghosts, the remains of hundreds of towns buried under the dunes. Roman historians wrote of them with fascination and fear, describing chariots that glided across the desert, striking from nowhere. For centuries, the Garamantes were forgotten, their story swallowed by the sands. Only in the 20th century did aerial archaeology and satellite imaging reveal the truth. The Sahara was once alive with cities. In the shadow of Nubia, along the Nile's southern reaches, another desert kingdom rose, the kingdom of Kush. Its kings built pyramids smaller, but steeper than those of Egypt, sharp like blades of sunlight against the dunes. From their capital at Meru, they ruled a realm of iron and stone, bridging the worlds of Africa and the Mediterranean. Their queens, the Kandake, were powerful monarchs, leading armies and shaping faith. When the great rivers of trade shifted, and Rome's shadow grew long, the Kushite cities fell quiet. The desert claimed them in the usual way, not suddenly, but softly, with the patience of wind. Yet even now, the pyramids of Meru still rise above the sand, their edges worn but unbroken, like memories refusing to fade. In the western desert of Egypt, archaeologists have uncovered the ruins of ancient Libyan cities, settlements once part of the mysterious Garamantis network, others linked to forgotten routes of gold and salt. In the oases of Dakhla and Karga, Roman walls still stand against the wind, testimony to the empire's farthest breath. When we look at deserts today, we often see emptiness. But emptiness is not the absence of life. It is the presence of memory. The dunes that drift across the Sahara are not sterile. They are the moving surface of buried time. Every ripple hides fragments of pottery, tools, and human bone. Geologists have discovered entire fossilized river systems beneath the Sahara, valleys thousands of kilometers long, filled long ago with flowing water. Through LiDAR and radar mapping, these invisible rivers reappear in soft blues and greens on digital maps, tracing the arteries of forgotten worlds. Some scientists believe these rivers once fed fertile plains that supported millions. The desert, then, is not death. It is a paused heartbeat. Sand, wrote one archaeologist, is memory in motion. It drifts, erases, and preserves all at once. To walk in the desert is to walk upon the sea of time, each dune a wave rising and falling over centuries. The same story unfolds across Arabia. The Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter, is the largest sand desert on earth, but even there, the past still murmurs. Beneath the dunes lie traces of Paleolithic lakes, animal bones, and stone tools dating back more than 100,000 years. These discoveries reveal that ancient humans once crossed Arabia during wet periods, moving between Africa and Asia long before history began. Civilizations rise where water lingers and vanish where it departs. The desert teaches us this with perfect clarity. When a climate shifts, when a river turns, when the rains retreat for the last time, cities crumble not in war, but in thirst. Perhaps that is the truest archaeology, the study of where water used to be. Each ancient oasis, each buried wall, each forgotten caravan route tells the same quiet truth, that survival and disappearance are separated by only a single season of rain. And yet, the desert is not cruel. It does not destroy in anger. It simply reclaims. It covers what it must and keeps what it loves. Under its shifting blanket, artifacts remain untouched for millennia, protected from rot, moisture, and decay. The sand preserves what time itself would have erased. In Sudan, the ruins of Napata and Meru gleam under the sun, testaments to resilience amid desolation. In the Sahara, the ghost lines of fortresses still emerge after storms, their walls rising for a moment before vanishing again beneath the next tide of sand. From space, satellites catch these fleeting apparitions, geometric grids, buried avenues, the outlines of forgotten irrigation systems. Modern scientists map them with technology the ancients could not imagine, yet all they reveal is what the earth already knew. The desert has always been both destroyer and archivist. It swallows, yes, but it also guards. Each windstorm is a page turning in a vast, unending book. Each uncovered stone is a word spoken back into the world. Civilizations built in the desert understood this. The Egyptians carved their prayers into granite, knowing that sand would one day erase the voice, but leave the impression. The Nabateans of Petra sculpted entire cities into rose-colored cliffs, letting the desert itself become their architecture. Even when buried, those walls breathe with the same patience as the dunes that surround them. To stand in these places, at Shizr, at Meru, at Petra, among the ruins of Garama or the lost wells of the Fezzan, is to hear the wind, carrying the same lullaby sung for thousands of years, the language of dust, of erosion, of return. Sand is not the end of civilization. It is its archive. Every buried city beneath the desert still exists, not only in its stones, but in the layers of wind that continue to shape its absence. When we uncover them, we are not disturbing their rest. We are listening to what the planet has been trying to tell us all along, that nothing is ever truly lost, that even silence leaves an echo, and that beneath the slow breath of the dunes, the cities of sand still dream of rain. The forest does not bury, it embraces. Where the desert erases with wind, the jungle hides with love. It closes its green hands around temples, swallowing them not in violence, but in patience. Listen long enough beneath the canopy, and you can almost hear the heartbeat of cities underfoot. Roots twist through stone corridors. Vines creep over carved gods. Birdsong drifts through collapsed colonnades, and the breath of humidity carries the scent of centuries. In the heart of Cambodia, the ruins of Angkor stretch across the plain like a dream half remembered. For centuries, the jungle guarded it, hiding towers, reservoirs, and causeways beneath a sea of trees. When the French explorer Henry Mouhot stumbled upon it in the 19th century, he believed he had found a lost city from another world. But Angkor was never truly lost. The commoners who lived nearby had always known of it. It was the outside world that had forgotten. At its height, Angkor was the center of a vast empire, a civilization of engineers, astronomers, and artists. They aligned their temples to the solstices, channeled water through immense reservoirs called beres, and carved stories of gods and kings into sandstone that still glows gold at dawn. Its crowning temple, Angkor Wat, mirrors the heavens, its 5 towers reflecting the peaks of Mount Meru, the cosmic mountain of Hindu belief. Yet even such mastery could not resist the breath of time. As climate shifted and the monsoon faltered, the intricate canals silted and cracked. Without constant tending, water turned from servant to enemy. Fields dried, trade routes drifted, and the jungle advanced, quietly, irresistibly, reclaiming what had been hers long before. Through LiDAR scanning, modern archaeologists have seen what the forest concealed: an entire network of cities surrounding Angkor, connected by roads and water systems extending for miles. It was not one city, but a constellation, a civilization hidden beneath leaves. When the maps lit up with those invisible streets, it was as though the planet itself had drawn back its curtain to show the memory beneath the moss. Far across the ocean, another green empire slept under a different canopy. In the vast Amazon basin, the rainforest hums with life, insects, vines, rivers that wander like living veins. For centuries, it was believed that no great civilization could have thrived there, that the soil was too poor, the jungle too dense. But science is rewriting that silence. From satellites and LiDAR surveys, archaeologists have traced geometric earthworks, circles, squares, and causeways, hidden beneath the trees of Brazil and Bolivia. Beneath the roots lie remnants of plazas, raised fields, and roads that once linked entire communities. Carbon dating and soil analysis reveal that these structures predate European arrival by centuries, signs of complex societies that shaped the forest without destroying it. These were not small villages lost to time, but vast networks, Amazonian earthworks, cities woven into ecology itself. They practiced sustainable agriculture, enriching the soil with terra preta, a dark, fertile earth created from charcoal, bone, and plant matter. To this day, terra preta retains its vitality, whispering the intelligence of those who crafted it. The forest remembers their hands through every root that still feeds upon that ancient soil. The Maya of Mesoamerica knew the same secret balance and the same inevitable fragility. Their cities, once vibrant with ceremony and astronomy, now lie beneath tangled green: Tikal, Calakmul, Coffin, Palenque. Towering pyramids rise like mountains wrapped in vines. The calls of howler monkeys echo where priests once chanted to the stars. For centuries, explorers found these ruins and believed them isolated wonders. Then, as with Angkor and the Amazon, LiDAR changed everything. From the air, beams of light pierced the canopy, revealing thousands of hidden structures, roads, terraces, fortresses, and entire cities lost to human eyes. The Maya lowlands, it turns out, were not scattered kingdoms, but an immense civilization, interconnected, planned, and alive with millions of souls. Beneath the forest, stone still holds the memory of their mathematics, their calendars, their quiet obsession with the cycles of time. They measured the heavens with more precision than many who came after, mapping eclipses and planetary motions across centuries. Their temples were not simply monuments, but instruments, machines of sky and stone. And when drought came, when the rains retreated and the maize withered, they watched the heavens for answers. But the forest, indifferent, began its slow return. Roots widened cracks, trees split walls, and nature folded the cities back into herself. The forest gives and takes in the same breath. It offers abundance, then demands silence. It covers what it cannot sustain, and sustains what it has covered. In Central Africa, the ruins of Great Zimbabwe rise among acacia and savanna, stone walls curving like echoes of wind. For centuries, they were misattributed by outsiders to distant builders, unwilling to believe that Africans had raised such architecture. Yet the truth endures. It was the Shona people, architects of their own destiny, who built this city of stone. When trade routes shifted and drought pressed close, they moved on, and the forest began its patient reclamation. In Southeast Asia, smaller kingdoms mirrored Angkor's fate. At Ayutthaya in Thailand, at Bagan in Myanmar, at Borobudur in Indonesia, time and vegetation wove together. Trees sprouting from stupas, fig roots draping walls like offerings. Each ruin is a reminder that life never stops building, even when humanity does. The jungle is both grave and guardian. It hides what it loves, and in doing so, preserves it. Under its humidity, paint still clings to stone. Carvings remain sharp. Skeletons of cities sleep in green shadow rather than crumble in sunlight. Scientists call this the paradox of tropical preservation. Decay is constant, yet protection is profound. Moisture destroys parchment, but saves color. Vines break walls, but prevent their collapse. In the forest, destruction and protection are one motion, the steady breathing of the earth. To walk among these ruins is to feel time as humidity, heavy, fragrant, omnipresent. It clings to your skin, it beads on stone, it slows your pulse until you can almost hear the centuries sighing. Every leaf, every trunk, every drop of rain carries fragments of carbon, once breathed by forgotten kings. The air itself remembers. We often think of discovery as uncovering what was lost, but in truth, it is the forest that allows us to find. Had it not wrapped Angkor, Tikal, and countless others in its green embrace, the stones might have vanished entirely. The forest, in its compassion, kept their memory alive, hidden until we were ready to listen again. When the archaeologist's machete slices through the undergrowth, the sound is not intrusion, but dialogue. Each cut is answered by birds, insects, and the whisper of leaves closing behind. Nature does not resist us. It reminds us that we are temporary guests. Civilization and wilderness have always danced together, each defining the other. And in their reunion, when vines meet temple, when root embraces pillar, we glimpse the planet as old as truth, that every act of creation ends in return. As we stand among these forest kingdoms, we realize that forgetting is not failure. It is how the earth breathes, exhaling civilizations, inhaling silence. For the forest has never destroyed a city out of malice. It simply continues to grow. And growth, too, is a kind of remembrance. Because when the light filters through the canopy and touches the carved faces of ancient stone, something stirs, not death, but continuity. a conversation between leaf and limestone, between past and present, between what was and what still hums beneath the green. The forest remembers every civilization it has swallowed, not as ruins, but as roots. And in its endless respiration, it teaches us that life's greatest monument is not stone, but renewal. Beneath the surface of the sea, the world is older than we remember. The waves that seem to erase everything have, in truth, preserved more than we know. Because the ocean, too, remembers, not in words, but in silence. It carries the outlines of cities long since drowned, their stones softened by coral, their streets turned into reefs. Every coastline is a shifting boundary between memory and forgetting. It advances, it retreats. Over millennia, entire worlds have been lost to its rhythm, not through catastrophe alone, but through the patient rising of the tides. Long before our maps had shape, the Earth's ice was thicker, the seas lower. Then the glaciers melted, and the ocean rose, swallowing the margins of continents, the places where early humans had built their first great settlements. Today, those coasts lie beneath 100 feet of salt water, scattered with pottery, tools, and ghostly outlines of walls. Along the western shores of India, near a city called Dwarka, divers once found something remarkable. Stone blocks arranged in geometric order, steps leading downward into silt, and artifacts of great age. Local legend had always spoken of Dwarka, the golden city of Lord Krishna that sank beneath the waves at the end of a great age. When modern explorers found these submerged ruins, the story stirred anew. Whether myth or memory, the lines blur in the blue. Carbon dating of nearby materials suggests human construction more than 9,000 years ago, at a time when the sea was still climbing. Was Dwarka a literal city, or a symbol of one? Perhaps both, a remembrance of humanity's earliest dance with the rising tide. The ocean keeps more secrets still. In the waters off Yonaguni, near Japan's Ryukyu Islands, strange terraces rise from the seabed, broad steps, flat platforms, and walls that seem too deliberate for chance. Divers call it the Yonaguni Monument, a structure that has fueled debate for decades. Some say it is natural rock, sculpted by the current. Others see the hand of ancient builders. Rectilinear edges, right angles, and massive proportions suggest design. A monument carved before the sea claimed it. If human-made, it could be older than the pyramids, from a time when the East China Sea was still dry land. If natural, it remains a powerful coincidence. The ocean carving architecture from stone, imitating our own instinct to shape. Either way, Yonaguni stands as a mirror, a reminder that creation and erosion speak the same language. Far across the world, in the blue silence of the Mediterranean, lies another legend made real, Heracleion, also called Thonis. For centuries, it was only a name in Greek texts, said to be the port where Heracles first stepped onto Egyptian soil. Historians doubt it existed. Then, in the year 2000, a French archaeologist named Frank Gaudio discovered its remains beneath the bay of Abu Qir. There, buried in silt and shadow, were colossal statues of pharaohs and gods, their faces still serene beneath the weight of time. Canals, harbors, and temples emerged from the mud, a full city lost for more than 1,000 years. It had once been the gateway to ancient Egypt, bustling with traders from Greece and beyond. When an earthquake struck and the ground liquefied, the city sank, swallowed whole by the Nile Delta. Now, its statues lie among schools of fish, its columns bloom with coral. The sea has not destroyed Heracleion, it has transformed it into a garden. Through the water's shimmer, the past feels alive again, softened, breathing. Other ports share its fate. Canopus, Pavlopitri, Baiae, each a world beneath the waves. Off the coast of Greece, Pavlopitri lies just a few meters below the surface. Streets, courtyards, and tombs more than 5,000 years old. Archaeologists mapped it with lasers and divers' lights, revealing a town older than most of recorded history. You can swim above its ghostly avenues, where sunlight refracts through broken walls, and imagine the hum of life that once filled them. In Italy, the Roman resort of Baiae, once the playground of emperors, now sleeps underwater near Naples. Its marble villas, mosaics, and statues still stand, glimmering beneath the shallows. There, Nero once walked. Now, divers float through his corridors. The sea is both a destroyer and a conservator, freezing the ruins in an eternal calm. And then, of course, there is Atlantis, the name whispered through every story of the deep. Whether it was a metaphor or a memory, a warning or a wish, Atlantis has come to symbolize the universal truth that civilizations rise and fall like tides. Plato described it as an island empire, greater than Libya and Asia combined, that vanished beneath the sea in a single day and night of misfortune. Some seek it in the Atlantic, others near Santorini, Crete, or even Antarctica. But perhaps Atlantis is not one place at all. Perhaps it is every lost shore, every drowned valley, every echo of humanity reclaimed by the ocean. The earth itself has shifted, continents moving, sea levels rising, volcanoes erupting, reshaping the edges of what we call home. The ocean has always been part of this story, patient and unjudging. It erases what it must, then remembers what it can, like a dream that never quite fades. Deep beneath the North Sea, between Britain and mainland Europe, lies a place once called Doggerland. 10,000 years ago, it was not sea, but grassland, a vast plain of rivers, forests, and lakes where mammoths roamed and humans hunted. As the glaciers melted, the ocean crept forward, inch by inch, until the land disappeared. Today, fishermen still pull up bones, antlers, and ancient tools from the seafloor, the remnants of a world that drowned slowly without witness. Every coastline today is a future ruin. What we build along the edge of the water will someday belong to the tide. Our ports, our towers, our cities of glass, all will fall under that same slow rhythm. The ocean's patience humbles us. It teaches that permanence is an illusion, and that loss can be beautiful. Because when the sea takes something, it does not erase it completely. It changes its language. Stone becomes coral, streets become reefs, statues become homes for fish. Life does not end. It transforms. Divers who descend into these ruins often describe a strange stillness, not fear, but reverence. To move through a submerged temple is to step between worlds. Time slows, sound disappears, and only the soft pulse of your own breath remains. The light bends through water, golden and liquid, turning every ruin into a cathedral. The sea becomes the ceiling, and the ruins below, the altar of memory. The ancients may have seen the ocean as a devourer, but in truth, it is a keeper. It does not forget what it consumes. It holds it close, under layers of salt and silence. The same salt that flows in our blood, the same element that once cradled all life, keeps these cities safe from the wind's decay. We think of ruins as reminders of what is gone, but under the sea, they are something more. They are proof that even in drowning, there is endurance. The ocean hums softly over the bones of our beginnings. And when the waves touch the shore, they whisper not endings, but invitations to remember that all creation begins in water and all returns to it in time. For beneath the waves, the earth keeps its deepest memories. And if we listen, truly listen, we can still hear them, murmuring in the language of currents and tides. High above the plains, where the air thins and breath becomes a prayer, human hands once built kingdoms among the clouds. The mountains, sharp, patient, eternal, have always called us upward. Perhaps it was the nearness to the sky, or the solitude, or the illusion of safety and height. Whatever the reason, some of humanity's most mysterious civilizations lived here, clinging to the edges of stone and wind. In the northern highlands of Ethiopia, the ruins of Aksum still rise against the sky, granite obelisks, silent and geometric, pointing toward the sun. This was once the heart of an empire that traded with Rome, India, and Arabia. Gold, ivory, frankincense, and knowledge flowed through its markets. The Aksumites carved their monuments from single blocks of rock, immense pillars etched with windows and doors that mimic houses, as if the living and the dead shared the same design. When the kingdom faded, the mountains remained. Now, shepherds walk among the stones, unaware that they tread the bones of a once great power. The wind whistles through the carved stele, carrying the same notes that echoed there 2,000 years ago. Aksum was not destroyed. It simply became part of the land. Far to the west, across the Mediterranean, on the island of Sardinia, stand the Nuraj, massive towers of basalt and mystery. They rise from the hills like the vertebrae of ancient beasts, their stones heavy with time. The Nuragic people built them long before Rome, before Greece even found its voice. Thousands of these towers dot the island, silent fortresses of a people whose name has been forgotten. No writing survives, no record of their kings or gods. Only stone and the haunting knowledge that they once shaped an entire landscape by hand. Archaeologists still debate their purpose: temples, strongholds, observatories. But perhaps the purpose was simpler: to endure. Each tower stands like a memory made solid, defying the erosion of both mountain and mind. To the east, the Zagros Mountains of Iran cradle another buried chapter. Among their valleys, the ancient kingdom of Elam once thrived, a culture older than Persia, older than Babylon. Its people built cities like Susa and Anshan, trading with Mesopotamia and shaping the earliest alphabets of the ancient world. But as empires shifted and deserts grew, Elam faded into the background hum of time. Today, fragments of clay tablets and crumbling walls remain, a faint heartbeat of a people who once looked at these same peaks and called them home. Their language is a riddle still unsolved, their gods' only names carved in stone. The mountains, however, remember their voices. Each echo that rolls through the valleys might once have been a hymn, a call to a deity whose name has not been spoken in millennia. Higher still, in the far reaches of the Himalayas, entire civilizations have come and gone without ever being recorded. In the thin air of Bhutan, Nepal, and Tibet, there are ruins few have seen, terraces carved into impossible cliffs, fortresses built from clouds and stone. Some are monasteries that have survived 1,000 years. Others are only faint outlines, erased by snow and silence. Archaeologists find pottery shards at altitudes where nothing should have thrived. Yet humans did, not as conquerors, but as caretakers of isolation. The Himalayas guard their secrets well. Even today, there are valleys untouched by modern eyes, where legends whisper of lost cities hidden behind eternal fog. Some speak of Zhangjiang, an ancient kingdom of western Tibet, said to have predated Buddhism, a land of scholars and mystics, of temples carved into mountain caves. Only fragments of its language survive, scattered through chants and scriptures. Its ruins, when found, seem less like cities and more like echoes, traces of minds that sought enlightenment, higher than any empire could reach. The mountains also bore witness to the cultures of the Andes, high above the clouds, where life itself seems improbable. Before the Inca, others walked these ridges: the Tiwanaku, the Wari, and the mysterious builders of Caral, far older than both. At nearly 4,000 meters above sea level, they built temples and cities from stone so perfectly fitted that even today, no blade can slip between the blocks. They aligned their structures to the sun, the moon, the stars, not for spectacle, but for harmony. Each wall, each step, each alignment was a prayer. When the empires fell, the stones remained aligned to the heavens, as if waiting for the builders to return. The mountains are patient. They have watched glaciers carve valleys, rivers etch canyons, and civilizations bloom and fade like alpine flowers. The people who lived here built not for eternity, but for balance. To live high is to live with limits, to respect the edge, to breathe in rhythm with the wind. When the balance broke, they left quietly, leaving their homes to the snow and the gods. Further north, in the plateaus of Armenia and Georgia, fortresses of Cyclopean stone rise like frozen thunder. The people who built them were the ancestors of forgotten tribes, their names scattered across the myths of the Caucasus. They lived between worlds, between Asia and Europe, between fire and ice, and their ruins still mark that boundary. Some of these mountain civilizations vanished not through war or decline, but through isolation itself. When trade routes shifted, their lifelines disappeared. The world below moved on, while the highlands stayed still. Their languages withered, their art ceased, and their temples turned to nests for eagles. Yet in a strange way, this silence is a kind of victory, because to be forgotten is also to be preserved. While the lowland cities were conquered, burned, and rebuilt, these mountain worlds simply slept, untouched, unaltered, complete in their solitude. From the Andes to Aksum, from Sardinia to the Himalayas, the high places remind us that civilization is not only measured by size or power, it is also measured by grace, by how lightly a people can live upon the earth, how gently they can build within the bones of stone. The higher one climbs, the smaller the world becomes. And perhaps that is why so many sacred places are built on mountains, because there, surrounded by sky, we remember how small we truly are. Civilizations come and go, yet the peaks remain, unbent, unbroken, their shadows older than our species. When the wind sighs through these ruins, it is not lamentation. It is continuity, the same wind that once filled the lungs of shepherds, pilgrims, and kings. It tells us that even here, among the clouds, humanity left its mark, not as conquerors of height, but as witnesses to eternity. In the thin air, time feels slower, and as we descend again toward the valleys, we carry a quiet understanding that what endures is not the empire or the monument, but the harmony between stone, spirit, and sky. For the mountains have never been conquered. They have only allowed us briefly to belong. Yet even now, high in these forgotten plateaus, life endures in quiet symmetry with the past. Children run through the ruins without knowing their names, their laughter echoing where prayers once rose. Goats climb the same terraces that once grew grain for kings, and wildflowers bloom in courtyards where once burned sacred fires. Time in these places is not a straight line. It is a spiral, circling endlessly back upon itself. Sometimes the mountain gives a gift. When the ice retreats or the wind uncovers an old wall, the earth reveals a small reminder, a shard of pottery, a tool, a footprint pressed into volcanic ash. These fragments are messages from those who came before, written in the oldest language of all, endurance. For though the names fade, the essence remains. A people's spirit becomes the air itself, thin, sharp, eternal. And perhaps that is why the mountains seem alive. They remember us, even when we forget ourselves. In the silence between peaks, if one listens carefully, one can almost hear it, the breath of ancient worlds still exhaling softly among the clouds. Beneath the feet of the living, another world waits. A world of stone corridors and hollow chambers, carved not by nature, but by human hands. Here, in the silence below, entire civilizations once breathed, unseen, unheard, yet profoundly alive. To go underground is to enter the memory of the planet. The deeper you walk, the quieter it becomes. The sounds of life, wind, birds, rivers, fade away, replaced by a different rhythm, the slow heartbeat of the earth itself. In the heart of Cappadocia, in modern-day Turkey, that heartbeat echoes through a labyrinth called Derinkuyu. What appears from above as barren land conceals beneath it one of the most astonishing feats of ancient engineering. 40 meters deep, carved directly into volcanic rock, Deringu is not a cave, it is a city. 8 levels stretch downward, each connected by narrow stairways and stone doors that could be rolled shut from within. At its peak, it could shelter as many as 20,000 people, families, livestock, and stores of grain. The air shafts that pierce its depth are perfectly placed, feeding fresh air through the stone. There are wells for water, kitchens blackened by smoke, and temples carved into the rock itself. No one knows exactly who built it. Some say the Hittites, thousands of years ago. Others, refugees from war or persecution in later centuries. But perhaps the truth is simpler. People seeking protection from a world above that had turned too harsh to bear. When you stand in Deringu, torchlight flickering along the walls, you can almost hear the hum of life that once filled it. Children laughing, tools striking stone, the murmur of prayer. It was not merely a refuge. It was a complete world, hidden within the body of the earth. Across Cappadocia, hundreds of similar underground cities lace the rock. Conakry, Azkonek, Maski, each with their own corridors, air vents, and secrets. Some connect to each other through long tunnels, stretching for kilometers beneath the plains. Together, they form a network of invisible towns, an entire society that chose to live beneath the sun. These places were not born from fear alone. They were acts of adaptation, humanity learning to move not just across the land, but through it. The earth became both home and armor, and in carving their lives into stone, they created monuments to resilience. Far to the west, in the chalk hills of northern France, another subterranean labyrinth lies hidden, the tunnels of Niors. They twist and weave through limestone, carved by hand during the Middle Ages. For centuries, villagers fled here from invaders, finding safety beneath the soil. What was once a refuge became a city below the city, with stables, bakeries, chapels, and sleeping quarters for thousands. Later, during the Great War, soldiers from around the world discovered those same tunnels. Many etched their names into the walls. Australians, Canadians, Americans, young men who sought shelter in the same silence that had once saved medieval peasants. The walls became a record of 2 eras of fear and endurance, layers of history sharing the same breath. Even deeper in time, across the Mediterranean on the island of Malta, lies the hypogeum of Kal Sefleni, a prehistoric temple carved entirely underground more than 5,000 years ago. 3 levels of chambers spiral downward in perfect symmetry, each designed with acoustics so precise that a human voice can resonate like thunder through the stone. Here, bones were laid to rest, rituals performed, and songs perhaps sung for the dead, echoing through the earth like lullabies for eternity. To stand in the hypogeum is to feel the weight of deep time pressing softly around you. The walls bear no writing, no names, only red ochre spirals painted by hands long gone. They symbolize eternity, rebirth, the cyclical motion of existence. Even without language, they speak clearly. This was a place where the living and the dead coexisted, not in fear, but in reverence. Across continents and centuries, the underground world repeats itself, the same instinct appearing again and again. In Ukraine, miles of catacombs beneath Odessa and Kiev. In Italy, the labyrinthine catacombs of Rome. In Egypt, the tombs of the Valley of the Kings. In each, humans sought not just to hide, but to remember, to carve permanence into impermanence. The catacombs of Rome stretch for hundreds of kilometers, narrow corridors lined with the tombs of millions. Early Christians buried their dead there in secret, lighting candles that flickered like stars in the darkness. Symbols of faith, the fish, the anchor, the vine, still cling to the walls. It is said that in those tunnels, people felt closer to eternity because they lived beneath it. Further east, in the deserts of Egypt, other tombs tell the same story in a different dialect of stone. Pharaohs were entombed with gold and scrolls, believing they could bring their world with them beyond death. But in time, sand filled the corridors, sealing the past in silence. Now, archaeologists who descend into those passageways walk the same path as the dead once did, each footstep stirring the dust of 1,000 years. To build below is to surrender control of light, to live by touch, sound, and trust. It changes the rhythm of existence. Days and nights blur. Time itself dissolves. The mind slows, the breath deepens, and what remains is presence, pure and unbroken. Perhaps that is why so many ancient people found the sacred in darkness. For in darkness, nothing distracts from the self. In Turkey's Cappadocia, priests may have whispered prayers in chambers shaped like wombs, soft curves of stone, echoing the heartbeat of the earth. In Malta, songs of the dead rolled through tunnels like rivers of sound. And in Rome, faith grew quietly in shadow, nourished by hope. The underground world is not one of despair. It is one of patience, of transformation. In modern times, explorers have mapped these labyrinths with lasers and ground-penetrating radar, revealing vast networks stretching farther than anyone imagined. Some reach under entire cities. They are the unspoken layer of civilization, a mirror to the one above. For every tower that rises toward the sky, there is a corridor that sinks toward the core. Every age builds both, the visible and the hidden. What we see is only half the story. The underground reminds us that humanity has always sought shelter within the planet, not apart from it. We have entered the mountains, the caves, the crust itself, not just to survive, but to belong. We carved cathedrals out of limestone and called them home. And as we did, we blurred the line between human and earth, until the two became inseparable. Today, when we look down upon the ground, we rarely think of what lies beneath. Subways, sewers, bunkers, basements, modern echoes of Derinque. We still build downward when the world above feels too fragile. We still trust the soil to hold us. Someday, far in the future, when our cities have faded and our towers have fallen, perhaps the archaeologists of another age will dig into the earth and find us, layers of concrete and steel, like strata of ambition. They will see our time as we see Derinque's, a world that sought safety in the dark. And maybe they will understand what we too have begun to learn, that going beneath the surface is not retreat, it is remembrance. The earth shelters not only the past, but the possibility of beginning again. Because below the light, in the quiet hum of stone, the story of humanity continues to breathe. But the story of the underground does not end in ancient stone. It continues, quietly, beneath our modern feet. In cities like Montreal, entire districts exist below the surface. Shopping centers, walkways, train lines, even parks, all built underground to escape the bite of winter. In Tokyo, subterranean malls and networks spread for miles, pulsing with light and motion, a world unseen by the sky. And in Helsinki, planners have carved entire neighborhoods into bedrock swimming halls, churches and museums hidden within granite walls. To walk there is to feel as if the earth itself has opened a gentle embrace to hold human life once more. We like to imagine that progress pulls us ever upward, taller buildings, higher skylines, reaching toward the stars. Yet the more fragile our world becomes, the more we look again to the soil. The ground that once held ancient farmers now holds our fiber cables, our data centers, and the foundations of our cities. It is as though we trust the earth more than the air. Some scientists now speak of a future where humanity may return underground not as refugees, but as architects of survival. As the planet warms and storms intensify, the ground below may again become sanctuary, a place of climate stability and quiet endurance. Architects design subterranean gardens where roots meet ceilings of glass. Engineers test geothermal shelters that breathe with the temperature of stone. What once was refuge may soon become design. And perhaps, deep beneath all these practicalities, something older calls us there, an instinct written into our very bones. For before cities, before firelight and language, our ancestors found safety in caves. The first art, the first stories, were painted on the walls of darkness. Handprints pressed into limestone, silent declarations. We were here. In that darkness, humanity found reflection, imagination, and the beginning of myth. When archaeologists entered the Chauvet cave in France, they discovered not ruins, but dreams preserved. Lions hunt bison across the walls. Horses gallop in rhythmic motion. The flicker of torchlight makes the figures move. It is cinema in shadow, the world's first theater written in flame and breath. There, underground, human consciousness first looked inward. It was in the dark that we learned to see. Perhaps that is the truest reason we keep returning below, not out of fear, but to remember what silence feels like. The noise of civilization fades, and in its place, a deeper awareness emerges. The earth beneath us is not void. It listens. It receives. It endures. And in that endurance, it teaches us something vital, that progress is not always ascent. That survival may not mean escape. Sometimes the way forward is a descent, into understanding, into humility, into the very heart of what holds us. So when you imagine the world beneath your feet, the tunnels, the caverns, the forgotten temples and cities of stone, remember, they are not relics. They are mirrors. Each one reflects the same truth written across time, that humanity has always lived between two worlds, the light above and the memory below. Rivers are the veins of civilization. Where water flows, life follows, and where it fades, the earth remembers what it carried away. Every great city that has ever risen began as a whisper beside a riverbank, a cluster of hands shaping mud into purpose. And when the water changed its course, when the river grew tired or the sky forgot to rain, those cities fell silent, their stones drying like bones in the sun. Today, satellites orbiting high above can see what the eye at ground level cannot, traces of rivers that no longer exist. Ghost channels wind through the sands of Egypt and Pakistan, through the deserts of Arabia and the plains of Central Asia. They are like the faded lines of an ancient script written across the body of the earth. One such line, faint yet unmistakable, marks the path of a river known in myth and scripture alike, the Sarasvati, long spoken of in the Vedic texts of ancient India as a mighty river flowing from the mountains to the sea. It was believed by many to be a legend, a spiritual metaphor, but modern geological surveys and satellite imaging began to tell another story. Beneath the sands of Rajasthan and Haryana, an ancient riverbed emerged, dry, immense, silent. It once rivaled the Indus in scale, feeding cities like Kalibangan and Lothal, sustaining an entire world that vanished when its waters withdrew. When the monsoons shifted, when tectonic tremors altered the courses of Himalayan streams, the Sarasvati began to die. As the river retreated, so too did its people, migrating eastward, merging with other cultures, carrying their gods and stories with them. The river did not disappear. It transformed, flowing instead through memory. Across continents, the same pattern repeats. Civilizations grow along water's edge, and when the current falters, time resumes its patient work. The Oxus River, lifeblood of ancient Bactria, once irrigated a civilization rich in gold and myth, traders, scholars, and artisans weaving their destinies between the deserts of Persia and the mountains of Afghanistan. Now the ruins of their cities, Ai Khanum, Shordugai, rest beneath the dust, their stones bleached by sun and silence. The river still flows, but weaker, narrower, its ancient strength reduced to a memory in the sand. And further west, the Garagam Desert of Turkmenistan conceals the remains of the Margiana civilization. a lost Bronze Age culture rediscovered only in the late 20th century. Archaeologists uncovered the city of Gonur Tepe, with its temples and palaces aligned to celestial patterns. It was a world once lush with irrigation canals, where water sculpted both land and belief. But when the rivers changed course, as they always do, the gardens turned to dust. The Margiana people vanished into history, their homes reclaimed by the dunes. Water is not merely a resource, it is a rhythm. When it stops, the rhythm breaks, and the dance of civilization falters. Every dry riverbed is an elegy, every desert a library of forgotten songs. In Africa, too, ancient rivers once carved empires, now hidden beneath arid soil. Beneath the sands of the Sahara, scientists have mapped vast networks of dried river valleys, remnants of a greener age when hippos swam where dunes now stretch for hundreds of miles. This was once the domain of the Green Sahara, a world of lakes and grasslands where early humans painted their lives on cave walls, herds of cattle, boats, and rain clouds. It was a different planet then, and as the monsoon shifted southward, the rivers shrank, the grass browned, and the people drifted toward the Nile, carrying with them the seeds of civilization. The ancient Niger River, too, once flowed through landscapes now dry and broken. Cities like Timbuktu and Jen were built upon its changing banks, thriving on the trade of gold, salt, and stories. But further north, archaeologists have found traces of even older settlements. Tichit, Dar Wolata, and Dar Tichit, the forgotten heart of an age before kingdoms. These were farmers and builders, their stone villages dating back over 3,500 years, long before the rise of Ghana or Mali. When the climate shifted and the river paths changed, their people vanished into migration and myth. The wind took their words. The sand took their walls. Sometimes a river does not simply dry, it hides. Beneath the Arabian Peninsula, scientists have discovered evidence of ancient buried river systems, seen only through radar imaging. These hidden rivers once fed oases and sustained the migrations of early humans out of Africa. They flowed when the desert was young and green, before the dunes became eternal. Each grain of sand is a fossil of water, each dune a monument to the movement of time. Civilizations are the children of rivers, and rivers are the children of rain. When the sky grows silent, the story ends, but not forever. Because in the Earth's long cycles, what disappears may one day return. Rivers can be reborn. In the melting of glaciers, in the swelling of monsoons, in the slow pulse of climate and time, the water finds its way again. And perhaps that is why, even today, we are drawn to the sound of rivers, the murmur, the movement, the memory. When we walk beside them, we are walking beside our own beginnings. Every civilization begins with the same gesture, a handful of water raised to the lips, a reflection of the sky shimmering in the surface. And every civilization ends with the same silence, the river gone, the well dry, the echo fading. There is a quiet truth in this, that nothing built upon the earth is permanent. Not cities, not empires, not even rivers. And yet, in their vanishing, they leave behind the most enduring gift, the memory of flow. The dry riverbeds, the cracked deltas, the ghostly paths seen only from space, all remind us that life itself is a cycle of arrival and retreat, of presence and absence. The people who lived along those vanished rivers did not disappear entirely. They became part of us, their migrations shaping languages, their myths flowing into our own. When they dreamed of floods, they were remembering a time when the world was wetter, when the horizon was green. When they spoke of gods that walked upon the waters, they were retelling their own survival, their gratitude, their awe. And so, beneath every desert, there is water still, hidden, ancient, waiting. And beneath every dry plain, there is the echo of a river's song. To walk through these silent landscapes is to walk through a mirror, one that reflects not just the past, but the fragile nature of all we build. Civilizations rise beside water because life needs movement. When that movement stops, the story pauses, but the page is never blank, because the earth does not forget. It holds the memory of every ripple, every flood, every hand that cupped a drink from its flow. The rivers may vanish, but their paths remain, etched into stone, written in sand, remembered in us. But sometimes what the earth hides, it reveals again, not as water, but as memory made visible. In the dry heart of deserts, scientists drill deep into the ground and pull up cores of sediment that tell stories older than language. Grains of pollen, trapped in layers of dust, speak of ancient forests and meadows long gone. Each grain, each fossilized seed, a reminder that the world we see today is only one of many faces the earth has worn. In the Taklamakan Desert of western China, explorers once stumbled upon a haunting sight: perfectly preserved mummies, their hair still braided, their clothes bright with color. These were the people of Lulan, a Bronze Age civilization once nourished by the Tarim River. They built cities along its course, traded silk and jade, and then, as the river turned and the desert advanced, they vanished. The wind entombed them in sand for thousands of years, until their faces returned to the light, serene, almost peaceful, as if merely sleeping. They remind us that the earth does not destroy. It preserves through stillness. Further west, in the Aral Sea basin, another river story unfolds. Within a single century, one of the largest lakes on earth nearly disappeared. The Amu Darya and Sir Darya, ancient rivers that once fed it, were diverted for irrigation, their flow reduced to a trickle. What remains is a wasteland of salt and shipwrecks, rusting hulls stranded in desert sand. It is a modern echo of ancient loss, a reminder that civilization still dances with the same forces that once buried cities and silenced rivers. We often think of deserts as emptiness, but that is an illusion. Beneath the dunes lie patterns invisible to the naked eye, the ghosts of streams, the veins of forgotten ecosystems. With satellite imaging, scientists can see the traces of paleocanals beneath the Sahara, their courses dark against the sand. Once they fed entire networks of life, herds of antelope, wild rivers of grass, early human settlements along the shorelines of lakes now gone. And in this way, the desert becomes not a void, but a memory, the world remembering itself in negative space. In some parts of the Middle East, old caravan routes still follow the ancient riverbeds. Camels tread where water once flowed, their hooves pressing into sand shaped by the memory of rain. The merchants who travel those paths may not know it, but they walk the same roads their ancestors took thousands of years ago, paths not drawn by maps, but by water's ancient hand. And when it rains on rare, miraculous days, the desert blooms. For a brief moment, rivers return. They flow only for hours, maybe days, before vanishing again into the ground. But in that time, they bring life. Seeds awaken, insects rise, colors burst like fire from the dust. It is the earth remembering itself, if only for a heartbeat. Water never truly disappears. It only changes form, hides in clouds, waits in stone, or sleeps beneath our feet. It is the oldest traveler, always leaving, always returning. And in every forgotten riverbed, in every desiccated lake, lies the promise of return, not of the same waters, but of the same rhythm, endlessly reborn. Perhaps that is why ancient people worshipped rivers as gods. They understood that these flows were not just water, but time itself. And to live by them was to live inside a story that never ends, the story of movement, loss, and renewal. When the earth finally dries, it will still remember the shape of water, and perhaps so will we. The earth remembers everything, even the stories that may never have been. Beneath the silence of soil and sea, there are worlds that live only in memory, in myth, and in the imagination of those who came before. They may not appear on any map, yet they have shaped every civilization that followed. These are the cities of legend, the half-remembered, the half-believed, places that exist between geology and dream. We begin with a name whispered for more than 2,000 years, Atlantis, a city of light and knowledge, as Plato wrote, born from the sea and swallowed by it in a single day and night of sorrow. For centuries, scholars have searched for it, in the Atlantic, the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, even beneath Antarctic ice. Yet each theory reveals less about Atlantis itself and more about us, our longing to believe that perfection once existed and that it could return. But perhaps the story of Atlantis was never about one place. Perhaps it was a memory of many, a collection of lost coastlines drowned by rising seas after the last ice age. Between 15 and 8,000 years ago, the oceans rose more than 100 meters, submerging entire continents of human habitation. Villages, temples, and fields disappeared beneath the waves, not in myth, but in measurable truth. And maybe, in the stories passed down through generations, those real floods became the foundation for a single great myth. Archaeologists have found traces of such worlds. Beneath the North Sea lies Doggerland, a once lush plain connecting Britain to Europe. It was a place of rivers and forests, where people hunted, fished, and built their lives before the waves came. As the ice melted and seas rose, the land vanished quietly over centuries until only the memory remained. Today, fishermen still pull bones, tools, and artifacts from its depths, each one a message from a world that once existed between land and sea. If there ever was an Atlantis, perhaps it was not a single island, but the sum of all the lands lost to the rising tide. Further east, off the coast of India, sonar imaging has revealed the remains of ancient structures beneath the waters of the Gulf of Karmat. Walls, steps, and foundations buried in silt. Though debate continues over their origins, they remind us that the sea has always been an archive of forgotten ages. To look upon these ruins is to look at time itself, civilization turning slowly to coral. In the Indian Ocean, legends speak of Kumari Kandam, a lost Tamil continent said to have stretched from India to Madagascar. In myth, it was a land of poets and philosophers, the birthplace of language and song. Science tells us that such a vast continent never existed, yet beneath the ocean floor, we do find fragments of a geological past, microcontinents, submerged ridges, and plateaus once above sea level before the Earth shifted its skin. In this meeting of story and science, the truth becomes deeper. Humanity has always sensed the instability of the ground beneath its feet. We dream of vanished lands because the Earth has erased so many before. Far to the Pacific, tales of Mu echo across the islands, a lost continent said to have been swallowed by the sea, leaving only scattered islands behind. While no geological evidence supports such a continent, the myth persists, carried by the winds between Polynesian traditions and Western imaginations. It reminds us that stories themselves are continents, vast, connected, and shifting. Every legend is a tectonic plate of memory, moving slowly through time. In the Atlantic, off the coast of Portugal, divers have discovered geometric stone formations near the Azores, once rumored to be remnants of Atlantis. In truth, they are volcanic, nature's architecture mistaken for humanity's. Yet the fascination persists because we crave meaning and pattern. We are a species of storytellers, compelled to fill every silence with possibility. And in the mystery of the deep, our imagination finds endless space. Even the Arctic and Antarctic hold their own whispers. In the frozen south, satellite images and radar scans have revealed strange geometric formations beneath the ice. Mountains, ridges, patterns that ignite the imagination. Scientists see geology. Storytellers see memory. The mind, like ice, preserves what it cannot prove. The same duality lives in every culture, the real and the remembered, the tangible and the sacred. In the Pacific, the people of Micronesia tell of islands that once stood where only ocean now remains. In the Andean highlands, the Uros people still live upon floating reed islands, echoing in ancient fear that land is never truly permanent. Across the Americas, flood myths stretch like a thread connecting distant peoples, from the Hopi to the Maya, from the Mesopotamians to the Greeks. Everywhere, humanity remembers a world remade by water. To call these stories false is to misunderstand their purpose. Myths are not lies. They are maps drawn by memory, sketches of truth seen through the mist of time. They are the language of remembrance, of reverence. And even when their geography is uncertain, their emotion is precise. They tell us what it felt like to watch the world change, to lose everything and begin again. Modern science gives us tools, satellites, sonar, stratigraphy, but myth gives us something equally vital, empathy for the unknown. For each lost city we uncover in fact, there are countless others that live only in story. Together, they remind us that the boundary between what was and what might have been is not a line, but a horizon. Perhaps in the end, Atlantis, Lemuria, and all their kin are not places at all. Perhaps they are reflections, mirrors the ocean holds up to remind us that nothing is eternal, not even the shore. And maybe, just maybe, they exist wherever the human heart longs for what it cannot see. For beneath our feet, the earth holds both truth and imagination, layered like sediment, inseparable, eternal. And when we listen closely to its silence, we hear both science and story speaking in the same voice, the voice of a world that remembers everything. Night falls slowly on the world. The deserts cool, the jungles sigh, the rivers murmur to themselves in their sleep, and beneath it all, beneath every step and shadow, the earth turns, carrying the weight of everything that has ever lived, everything that has ever been forgotten. For all our monuments and memories, all our art and ambition, this is where we return, to the soil, to the slow breathing of stone. Civilizations rise, speak their names, and fade, yet their echoes never leave. They become the dust that feeds the grass, the minerals that form the mountains, the silence between the waves. The earth keeps them all, not as a museum, but as a memory, quiet, patient, eternal. Beneath the cities of today lie the bones of yesterday. Beneath Rome, the foundations of Etruscan villages. Beneath London, the remains of Roman roads and Iron Age camps. Beneath the pavement of New York, traces of Lenape trails and colonial wharves. Every skyline stands upon the ruins of another, like words written over words, stories layered into the deep pages of time. And deeper still, beneath the reach of spade and light, the planet holds civilizations that even memory has surrendered. The mud of rivers hides them, the salt of the sea enfolds them, and the mountains grind them into their long sleep. Yet nothing is truly gone. The carbon of their bodies, the stone of their walls, the metals of their tools, all have returned to the cycle, to become something else. The atoms that once shaped kings and farmers, sculptors and dreamers, are now part of us. We are built from the dust of those who came before. If the earth could speak, if the wind through its canyons, and the murmurs beneath its crust were words, it might say this: I have seen your empires. I have felt your fires. I have watched you carve your hopes into my skin, and I have carried them all into memory. Perhaps it would not speak in sorrow, but in wonder. For to be remembered by the earth is not to be lost. It is to become part of something larger than time. The fossils of ancient forests now fuel our fires. The bones of forgotten beasts form the hills we walk upon. The stones that once formed temples are now dust in the wind that carries seeds. Everything that has ever existed becomes the foundation for what will come next. When archaeologists unearth the remnants of old worlds, a broken amphora, a charred grain, a single bead of glass, they are not merely uncovering the past. They are opening a dialogue between what was and what remains. The soil itself is a language, one that does not speak in words, but in weight, color, and silence. And in that silence, something sacred resides. Because every ruin, every fossil, every weathered carving is not a story of death, but of persistence. Civilizations end, but humanity endures. We inherit not only their technologies, but their questions, their search for meaning, their awe before the cosmos, their quiet awareness of impermanence. The earth teaches us this lesson gently, that loss is not the opposite of life, but a part of its design. The collapse of one world makes room for another. The ashes of one city become the clay of the next. And beneath the endless cycles of rise and fall, something steady hums, the pulse of a planet that has seen it all and still turns with grace. Even now, in the deep future of our species, we are adding our own layers to the story. Our buildings, our roads, our machines. One day they too will be sediment. Geologists will read our age in lines of concrete and plastic in the trace metals of our time. To them, we will be another civilization beneath the feet of others. And that, perhaps, is beautiful. For we are not outside of history. We are inside the Earth's long breath. When the archaeologist of some distant age uncovers our remains, they may wonder what we dreamed of, what songs we sang, what we feared and loved and built for. And though our words may fade, our essence will remain, written not in books, but in the ground itself. Because in truth, the planet is the only historian that never forgets. Look down at the soil beneath you. It is older than language, older than the pyramids, older than the sea. In a handful of dirt lies the memory of everything. Volcanic ash, stardust, the decay of empires. When you touch the ground, you are touching time. And maybe that is what all our searching truly means. Our excavations, our myths, our endless need to uncover. We are not merely looking for the past. We are listening for ourselves, for the sound of continuity in an ever-changing world. We dig not to find what was lost, but to remember that nothing is ever truly gone. The forgotten civilizations, the 100 beneath our feet, are not gone because we speak their names. They live in us, in the tools we hold, in the art we create, in the silence we inherit. Their stones have become our atoms, their dreams our inheritance. They built with the materials of their time, just as we build with ours. And when we are gone, others will build from us. The earth turns, endlessly rewriting its own story, endlessly remembering. It is not cruel, nor kind, only patient. And within that patience lies a quiet mercy, that even the smallest trace of what once was endures. So when you walk through forest, field, or city, listen. The sound beneath your footsteps is not just gravel or soil. It is history breathing. It is the pulse of civilizations forgotten, waiting for you to notice. And if you pause long enough, you may hear it, the faint hum of all things past, a chorus of vanished worlds whispering in unison, reminding you that you, too, are part of their song. The earth forgets nothing. It only buries its memories in silence and waits for us to remember. Before there were stories, there was sound. Before there was language, there was rhythm, the pulse of rain on leaves, the song of wind over stone, the heartbeat of the planet itself. It was a time before words, before names, before meaning as we understand it. And yet, everything that would one day become human already slept in the soil, already shimmered in the salt of the sea. The earth was young then, though it had already lived 1,000 ages. The continents still drifted like slow clouds upon molten seas. Mountains rose and fell like the breath of a sleeping giant. Volcanoes wrote fire across the sky, and oceans steamed under the weight of creation. Life, small and patient, began its long climb from the depths, first as shadow, then as spark, then as song. For billions of years, the earth sculpted itself in silence. No witness, no architect, only time. It was an art so vast that no human could ever fully see it, yet every human carries its trace. In the calcium of our bones, in the salt of our tears, we echo the ocean that birthed us. We are walking fossils of the sea's first dream. And when the first light fell upon the first land, the world bloomed into color. Coral reefs rose like cathedrals beneath the water. Forests of ferns reached for a sky thick with mist. Creatures moved for the first time, crawling, swimming, singing their presence into existence. Every footprint on the sand was a signature of life saying, "I am here." But long before humans built pyramids or cities, there were other empires, older than history, forgotten by memory. The empire of the trilobites, whose reign lasted longer than all mammals combined. The age of ammonites, whose spirals turned with the tides of 1,000,000,000 dawns. The forests of carbon that became our coal, the plankton that became our oil. These too were civilizations in their own way. Vast ecosystems that lived, flourished, and passed into the long sleep of geology. They were the first worlds, the first attempts of the planet to imagine itself alive. And though they vanished, they never truly ended. Every breath we take contains their ghosts. Oxygen born from ancient leaves, carbon recycled from the bones of prehistoric seas. To live is to inhale history. Then came the creatures that would change everything. The first mammals, the first primates, the first beings to look at the stars and wonder we do not know their names, only their echoes. A mother teaching her child to find warmth in the firelight. A clan following the rhythm of the seasons, tracing constellations across the night sky. Somewhere between survival and song, consciousness awoke, and the silence of the world was broken by the first story. It was not written. It was spoken, breathed into the air like wind through grass. A myth, perhaps, of how the moon came to rise, or why the river bends. A way to make sense of what could not yet be understood. These stories were maps, not of geography, but of belonging. Through them, we remembered who we were and how the earth had made us. The first storytellers did not seek immortality. They spoke because it was what life does when it becomes aware of itself. Every tale was a campfire in the dark, a flicker against the endless night. And through them, the human mind began to stretch beyond survival into memory, imagination, and meaning. When we speak of civilization, we often think of stone and metal, but the first civilization was sound. It was the shared rhythm of a group around a flame, the soft call of hunters to one another, the heartbeat that synchronized when hands built something together. Long before the wheel, before writing, before the plow, there was community, the invisible architecture of empathy. And it was from this unseen foundation that all later wonders would rise. The earth remembers this too. The valleys where early humans once gathered still carry faint traces of their fires. Charred seeds, broken tools, pigments made from ochre and bone. To the geologist, they are artifacts. To the earth, they are echoes, soft reminders of when awareness began to ripple across its surface. There are places where this first awakening still lingers, in the caves of Lascaux and Chauvet, where humans painted animals they revered, not hunted. Horses, lions, bison, drawn with astonishing grace in the flickering light of torches. To look at those walls is to gaze across 30,000 years and find something achingly familiar. Awe. The same awe that fills us when we watch the stars today, or listen to the sea, or whisper to ourselves in the dark. It is the continuity of wonder. We call these early people primitive. But they were poets in another language, the language of gesture, pigment, rhythm. Their art was prayer, their movement ritual, their silence profound. They did not conquer the world. They belonged to it. And maybe that is the truest form of civilization. Not the ability to build, but the ability to remember that we are part of something vast. The earth did not need us, but it dreamed us anyway. It took 4 billion years to shape the human hand, a tool delicate enough to sculpt, strong enough to plant, and capable of reaching toward the stars. With that hand, We have written symphonies, carved gods, built empires, and held one another. And though our hands change the world, they are still made of the same stardust that once formed the first sea. The age before memory was not lost. It became the foundation of everything. The instinct to tell stories, to pass on meaning, to leave traces for those who come after, that began long before us. We are continuation, not beginning. And when we speak, we are not creating new stories. We are remembering old ones that have been waiting in the silence since the first dawn. For the earth, time is not a straight line. It circles, breathes, returns. Each age rises from the ashes of the last, reshaped, renewed, reborn. And somewhere, deep beneath the surface, the first song of creation still hums, low and endless, like a heartbeat in stone. That sound is still within us. It is what we hear when we stand alone in the wilderness, when we listen to the wind and feel it speak without words. It is the voice of the world, calling us back to where we began. Sometimes I wonder if memory itself is a kind of echo, the mindless way of participating in geology. Each thought is a layer, each dream a fossil of something once felt. In the same way, the earth holds its own memory, pressed into stone and water. A ripple frozen in mud becomes a mark that lasts millions of years. An ancient raindrop, caught in ash, becomes an eternal signature of weather long past. If the planet can remember the fall of rain, how could it ever forget us? When we gaze at a mountain, we see solidity, permanence. But a mountain is only a wave slowed down. Stone moves only too slowly for us to see. And in that slow motion, there is a lesson. Civilizations rise and fall faster than rivers change their course. Our stories are brief flashes of light between geological breaths. And yet, within that brevity, we have become the voice through which the planet speaks its awareness. Every whisper of wind through grass is older than our species. Every glint of starlight is older than our bones. Still, we hear meaning in them. Perhaps meaning is not something we invent, but something we uncover, a language the earth has always spoken. When the first humans lifted their eyes to the sky, they weren't looking at something foreign. They were looking at their reflection, at the same atoms, the same dust, the same origins, scattered across infinity. The stars are our oldest ancestors. The calcium in our teeth, the iron in our blood, the carbon that shapes our cells, all born from the death of ancient suns. Every heartbeat is the echo of a supernova. Every breath, a continuation of creation's first sigh. And in that realization lies something humbling. We are not the beginning of consciousness. We are its most recent ripple. Even now, the world around us continues to dream. A seed splits in darkness, following a rhythm it cannot see. A glacier moves down a valley, reshaping the land grain by grain. Coral grows, shell by shell, into towers that rival any city. These are civilizations too, not of people, but of persistence. They rise without pride and fall without tragedy, yet they endure in ways we struggle to imagine. Sometimes in the deep quiet of night, if you listen closely enough, you can almost hear that dream, the long murmur of life continuing beneath thought. It moves through the soil, through the veins of trees, through the slow breath of the ocean. It does not speak in words, but in patience. And we, for all our knowledge, are still learning to listen. There is something profoundly ancient in that act of listening, a remembrance of the time when we did not separate ourselves from the world. Back then, there was no us and it. There was only motion, only being, only presence. And maybe, as the earth remembers us, it waits for us to remember it too, not as ground to stand upon, but as a living memory that holds us in return. The earth does not end. It transforms. Every silence in the geological record is not an erasure, but a turning of the page. And sometimes those pages are written in floodwater. There have been many floods in the planet's long story. Some came from the sea, others from the sky. Each one redrew the map of the world, reshaping valleys, carving coastlines, sweeping away entire worlds of memory. And in their wake, people began to tell stories, stories that would become the oldest in human history. Flood myths appear everywhere, in Sumer, in Greece, in India, in the highlands of South America, among the elders of the Pacific Islands. Different voices, same rhythm, the memory of water rising. The earth remembers too. At the end of the last ice age, the world began to thaw. Massive glaciers, miles thick, melted into roaring torrents. Rivers became oceans, coastlines retreated, and the sea climbed higher with every century. Entire landmasses disappeared beneath the waves, lands where mammoths once walked and humans built their first homes. It was not one great flood, but thousands of smaller ones spread across millennia, a slow, planetary awakening that felt, to those who lived it, like the end of the world. To the people of Northern Europe, this was the drowning of Doggerland. Between what we now call England and the Netherlands, there once stretched a vast green plain, rivers, forests, herds of deer. For thousands of years, it was home to hunter-gatherers who lived by its shores. Then the water came, first creeping through river valleys, then rushing, unstoppable. By 6000 BCE, it was gone, the North Sea now rolling above it. But fishermen still pull up the bones of mammoths and tools of ancient hands from the depths, a ghost continent beneath their nets. Far to the east, on the coast of Japan, divers discovered strange stone terraces beneath the sea near Yanaguni. Step-like formations, carved by water and time, or perhaps by human hands long before the sea claimed them. The debate endures. Were they natural or man-made? But maybe the answer is both. Nature and humanity have never truly been separate. Every civilization is built upon the bones of geology. In the Mediterranean, the lost city of Thonis Heracleion lay forgotten for over 2 millennia beneath the Nile Delta. Its colossal statues, ships, and temples were swallowed by an earthquake and the slow rise of the sea. When divers rediscovered it in the early 2000s, they found its monuments resting on the seabed, still upright as though waiting for the tide to fall again. Stone lions, anchors, and coins glimmered in the murk like relics of a dream. Even underwater, the architecture still breathed, patient, unbroken. Elsewhere, off the coast of Greece, the ancient port of Pavlopetri tells a quieter story. It is one of the world's oldest known sunken cities, dating back nearly 5,000 years. Its streets, courtyards, and tombs remain remarkably preserved beneath only a few meters of clear blue water. Scientists believe a series of earthquakes slowly drew it beneath the surface, piece by piece. Now fish swim through its doorways. The sea has become its second sky. And along the coast of Israel, another city sleeps, Atlityam. It was a Neolithic village, built over 8,000 years ago when the sea was lower. Its inhabitants farmed, fished, and buried their dead in circular stone tombs. When the Mediterranean rose, it covered them entirely. Today, divers find skeletons still lying where they were placed, surrounded by shells and offerings. Even beneath water, ritual endures. But perhaps the greatest of all drowned lands was not in the Mediterranean or the north, but in the far southeast, the Sunda Shelf, beneath the waters of Indonesia and Malaysia. When the last ice age ended, rising seas swallowed an entire subcontinent. Islands we now know as Java, Sumatra, and Borneo were once connected by broad plains where rivers met in fertile deltas. Here, archaeologists have found tools and bones dating back more than 70,000 years. When the floods came, the people moved to higher ground. Yet their stories remained, echoes of lost homelands remembered in myth as Lemuria, or Mu, or the drowned islands of the gods. Science calls this process post-glacial sea level rise. Myth calls it the flood. But beneath the names, they are the same event, the earth remembering its balance. When ice melts, land breathes again. When land sinks, the ocean exhales. It is not destruction, but transformation, the slow rhythm of equilibrium. Even in recent centuries, the earth has continued this dance. Volcanoes rise and collapse. Lakes burst through their barriers. Deltas drown under silt. The past is never gone. It only changes shape. When archaeologists dig through river mud or drill into seabeds, they are not unearthing ruins. They are turning the pages of a very long story, one written not in ink, but in water. Perhaps that is why so many of our oldest myths begin with light, a creation, a dawn, and then with flood. In Mesopotamia, Utnapishtim built an ark to survive the gods' cleansing storm. In India, Manu was warned by a fish of the coming deluge and carried life to safety. In the Americas, the Hopi tell of previous worlds destroyed by water, fire, and ice. And in the Pacific, the Maori and the Polynesians speak of canoes that followed the stars after the waters rose. Different lands, same story, the memory of survival. Science now confirms what myth always intuited. Humanity is older than its cities, and catastrophe has always been our companion. Each flood reset the rhythm of the world. Each loss carved humility into our bones. Perhaps this is why we keep building by the water's edge, despite knowing the risk. Something in us recognizes that the water is our mirror, that all life returns to it eventually. The ocean, after all, is the planet's first memory. It remembers the continents before they drifted, the sky before it cleared, the first spark of lightning that may have birthed life. And now, in the deep trenches and sunken plains, it keeps our secrets, the bones of ships, the outlines of temples, the silent stories of those who lived before the sea came back. The flood is not only a past event, it is a constant truth. Change is the water through which time flows. And every civilization, no matter how grand, must one day face its tide. When we stand on the shore and watch the waves touch the land, we are witnessing that ancient covenant. Land and sea, loss and renewal, silence and song. The tide recedes, but it always returns. So does memory. And perhaps, when the last of our own cities has faded, and the sand begins to settle again, the ocean will carry our story too, scattering fragments of glass and steel across the seabed, just as it once did with stone and clay. It will keep our echo, as it has kept all others. And in that endless whisper of waves, the earth will continue its remembrance, slow, unbroken, and kind. But not all who faced the flood were erased. Some learned to listen to the rhythm of the waters, to move as the earth moved. In the lowlands of what is now Bangladesh, people built floating homes that rose and fell with the monsoon. In the deltas of the Mekong and the Nile, ancient farmers carved irrigation channels that turned floods into harvests. And on the banks of the Euphrates, early Sumerians built their cities atop earthen mounds, small islands of permanence in a world that refused to stay still. Every adaptation was an act of faith that what comes to wash away can also bring renewal, because water is never only destruction. It is memory in motion. Every drop that falls today has cycled through oceans, glaciers, and clouds for billions of years. The same water that flooded Doggerland may fall now as rain on a city street, or rest in the veins of a living leaf. To touch water is to touch every age at once. The Pleistocene, the Bronze Age, the moment you are living now. The flood is not past tense. It is present, continuous. In the myths, after the waters recede, there is always light. The ark rests on a mountain. The rainbow stretches across the sky. The survivors step onto damp soil, the world washed clean of its old illusions. And though these tales speak in symbols, they carry a truth older than writing, that destruction is only half the cycle. The other half is becoming. Every civilization that vanished left something behind for the next. Tools, seeds, fragments of thought. From the silt of vanished rivers grew new fields. From the ruins of drowned cities, new myths. Even the seas themselves, once the great destroyers, became nurseries of life. Coral reefs built from the skeletons of the past, glowing with impossible color. The earth recycles not only matter, but meaning. In the end, what the flood teaches is humility. It reminds us that no wall, no monument, no empire stands against time's tide. Yet it also teaches resilience, the quiet art of returning, reshaping, rebuilding. Humans are, above all, creatures of adaptation. We learn from each loss how to live again, and each generation carries forward a little of what the last could not hold. Perhaps this is why our oldest rituals involve water, baptism, cleansing, renewal. The act of immersion is both surrender and rebirth. When we let ourselves be carried by the current, we momentarily join the memory of all who came before. It is a symbolic flood, the recognition that we are part of something larger, something that flows through all things. The planet breathes in cycles, creation, destruction, renewal, and so do we. We are the tide made flesh, the earth remembering itself, one life at a time. In the stillness of dawn, when the mists coil around the roots of ancient temples, the forest breathes through stone. Here, in the forgotten places of the world, empires sleep beneath a canopy of green. Roots curl through the cracks of old walls, leaves whisper over the carvings of kings, and the jungle hums with the slow reclamation of time. It is here that we find the quiet aftermath of human greatness, the bones of cities swallowed whole by the earth that bore them. There was a time when these ruins were not ruins, when they glittered with gold, echoed with prayers, and burned incense to gods now nameless. The jungles of Cambodia once held the heart of Angkor, a city so vast it stretched beyond the horizon. Canals, causeways, and towers aligned with the stars. From above, it looked like a mandala carved into the living land, a cosmic mirror of heaven itself. At its height, Angkor may have been the largest city on Earth, yet it vanished, not with an explosion, but with a slow forgetting. The climate changed, the rivers shifted, and the forest crept back in, root by patient root. Now strangler figs climb its temples, and the cries of macaques echo through the galleries of gods. The jungle did not destroy Angkor, it embraced it. The same story repeats in whispers across continents. In the heart of the Amazon, where the air hangs thick with life, archaeologists have begun to uncover the grid lines of lost cities, traces of roads and plazas beneath the canopy. For centuries, explorers thought this forest was untouched wilderness. But the soil tells a different story. Dark, fertile earth, engineered by human hands, terra preta, the black earth of the ancients. It is proof that people once lived here in great numbers, cultivating, shaping, and sustaining the forest instead of clearing it. When they disappeared, the trees simply grew back, folding over their cities like a green tide. Now, with satellites and LiDAR, the outlines of those ancient metropolises re-emerge, ghost cities drawn in chlorophyll and shadow. Stone, too, tells its own story. In the deserts of Egypt, beneath waves of heat, stand the ruins of Thebes, Memphis, and Luxor, the eternal cities of the Nile. Their columns rise like petrified trees, their hieroglyphs still whispering prayers to the sun. Each symbol, carved with reverence, was meant to last forever. And in a way, it has. For though dynasties have fallen and sands have shifted, the stones remain, patient witnesses to the cycle of empire. Wind and water wear them down grain by grain, yet still they stand, defying time through sheer stillness. The pyramids are not merely monuments. They are the earth, remembering the shape of human hands. Further west, in the arid heart of Peru, the city of Machu Picchu clings to the mountains like a dream half remembered. Built by the Inca high above the clouds, it was hidden from the world for centuries. The Spaniards never found it. It waited in silence, wrapped in fog, until the modern age rediscovered its terraces and temples. There is something about that city, a serenity carved into stone. Its stairways seem to lead not just upward, but inward. When the mists roll through, the place feels alive, as if the mountains themselves are breathing. Here, stone and sky are one language, the conversation between humanity and the planet in perfect balance. And then there is Petra, the rose-red city of Jordan, carved directly into sandstone cliffs. Once a hub of trade and culture, it now stands half buried in silence. When the sun sets, the cliffs burn with color, crimson, amber, violet, as if the rock still remembers fire. Petra teaches us something profound, that beauty can survive long after purpose fades. Even as the desert reclaims it, the city glows. Its ruins are not dead, they are dreaming. Every civilization builds with the illusion of permanence. We carve our names into marble, raise towers that touch the clouds, and believe our monuments will stand forever. Yet the earth always has the final word. The wind erodes, the vines return, the rivers shift their course, and what was once empire becomes garden. But this is not loss, it is transformation. The planet does not destroy what we make. It absorbs it, weaves it back into the living web. In the ruins of Angkor, trees grow from temple roofs, their roots twisting like veins. In the Andes, lichen paints the stones of Machu Picchu in silver and green. In the deserts of Egypt, the pyramids glow beneath the dust of stars that once guided their builders. Everywhere, the earth reclaims what is hers, not with anger, but with grace. Each ruin becomes habitat. Each monument, a mountain in miniature. Even the crumbling bricks of ancient cities feed the soil for future life. Perhaps the true permanence of empire is not in stone at all, but in the stories that survive it. The people of Angkor still tell these of the god kings. In Peru, the Quechua still sing the songs of their ancestors. In the sands of Egypt, the hieroglyphs still speak to those who learn their language. And in the Amazon, the trees themselves are the inheritance, living cathedrals built on the memory of human care. In every ruin, there is both an ending and a beginning. The fall of cities reminds us that we are not separate from nature, but part of its eternal rhythm. Empires rise like tides and fall like seasons. The earth waits, patient and kind, ready to gather the stones and seeds we leave behind. And one day, far in the future, our own cities, the glass towers and steel monuments of this age, will also fade. The wind will whistle through their hollow shells, and the vines will climb once more. And perhaps some distant civilization will find them and wonder who we were, what dreams we had, what gods we served, what world we imagined into being. In the end, the forest always wins, not by conquest, but by continuity. For life's quiet persistence is stronger than any crown, any monument, any empire. The earth reclaims not to erase, but to renew. And through her renewal, we are remembered not as rulers of the planet, but as threads in her endless living tapestry. Above every city that ever lived, the same stars once burned. They shone upon the builders of pyramids, upon the shepherds of Mesopotamia, upon the sailors who traced invisible roads across the sea. Even now, the light of those same suns drifts through our skies, whispering of ages when the heavens were our oldest scripture, when humanity looked upward not with wonder alone, but with understanding. Every civilization, in its own way, built toward the stars. Before we raised towers of steel, we raised stones to mirror the heavens. The pyramids of Giza, aligned almost perfectly to true north, are not merely tombs. They are instruments of cosmic memory. Each side reflects a celestial orientation, each passage aligned to a star that once marked rebirth. When light fell upon those ancient corridors, it was not chance, it was design. The builders were mapping eternity, writing time itself into the shape of stone. Far across the sea, on the windswept plains of England, the standing stones of Stonehenge hold their vigil. In midsummer, the sun rises directly above the heel stone, casting a line of light through the heart of the monument. Thousands of years ago, people gathered there, farmers, hunters, and priests. Watching the light announced the turning of the year. Stonehenge was more than a calendar. It was a bridge between worlds, sky and earth, life and death, the known and the mysterious. Even now, in the hush of dawn, when mist rolls over Salisbury Plain, one can feel the ancient purpose breathing through the stones. Across the Atlantic, the ancient Maya built cities that also spoke to the stars. In Chichen Itza, the pyramid of Kukulcane becomes a living serpent during the equinox. As the sun sets, its light creates the illusion of a snake slithering down the staircase, a dance of shadow and brilliance that connects the heavens to the earth below. The Maya studied the sky with precision unmatched for centuries. They charted Venus, predicted eclipses, and measured time with interlocking calendars, so exact they rivaled the accuracy of modern instruments. Their astronomy was not separate from their spirituality. It was their spirituality. They saw the cosmos as a living being, breathing through the rhythm of stars and seasons. In ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, priests of yore watched the constellations from their ziggurats. High above the plains, they built their temples as stairways to heaven, each level rising closer to the realm of the gods. They named the stars, recorded their movements, and saw in them the destinies of kings. The ziggurat of Ur itself was aligned to the cardinal points, just as the pyramids were, a reflection of cosmic harmony. For them, the sky was not chaos, it was order made visible. And in their clay tablets, inscribed with wedge-shaped letters, they left the earliest written records of astronomy known to humankind. Even in places now forgotten, the stars were guides. In the islands of Polynesia, voyagers memorized the rising and setting points of hundreds of stars to navigate the open ocean. They carried no compass, no maps, only the constellations, the winds, and the shape of the swells. Their canoes sailed thousands of miles across the Pacific, finding new lands with the precision of the night sky as their compass. To them, the stars were not distant fires. They were companions, ancestors, and teachers. In the deserts of Egypt, in the temples of Abu Simbel, the morning sun pierces the sanctuary only twice a year, illuminating statues of the gods seated within. This perfect alignment was not coincidence. It marked the cycle of the sun and the calendar of life along the Nile. To build such harmony required not only engineering, but faith, a belief that the heavens themselves were part of human design. When light enters that temple, it is as if time itself remembers. Across the Indian subcontinent, ancient observatories rose like sculpted instruments of stone. In Jaipur, the Jantar Mantar still stands, a collection of precise astronomical devices built centuries ago to measure celestial motion. Each curve and angle serves a purpose, tracking declinations, solstices, equinoxes. The builders of India's ancient cities saw the same truth the Egyptians and Maya did, that to understand the sky was to understand life. The heavens were not far away. They were woven into every breath, every harvest, every birth. The civilizations of the Andes also built their sacred places in conversation with the cosmos. At Machu Picchu, the Intihuatana stone, the hitching post of the sun, marks the precise moment when the sun stands still at the solstice. To the Inca, this was not merely observation, but communion. They believed the stone tethered the sun to the earth, ensuring the balance of light and shadow that sustained all living things. Even now, when sunlight touches that stone, it feels as if the world holds its breath. Across time, from Africa to Asia, from Europe to the Americas, one truth emerges. The sky has always been our mirror. Civilizations rise and fall, but the constellations remain. Each culture drew different patterns from the same stars, but all were seeking the same thing, connection. A sense that the vastness above and the mystery within were one and the same. We often imagine ancient astronomy as primitive, yet in truth, it was deeply advanced, not in the mechanical sense, but in the philosophical one. Our ancestors understood that to measure the heavens was to measure meaning. Their instruments were made of stone and song, of rhythm and ritual. They did not seek to control the stars, only to live in harmony with them. Today, when we look up at the night sky, most of us see it through the haze of city light, the faint shimmer of a few surviving constellations. We forget that this same canopy once ruled human imagination, that every temple, every calendar, every myth was born beneath it. The stars we ignore now once guided the birth of nations. They taught us time, navigation, agriculture, faith. They were our first teachers, and perhaps our last remaining constants. There is humility in remembering this, that even as we build cities of glass and code, the same ancient light still falls upon us. We are still beneath the same sky that shone on Göbekli Tepe, on Babylon, on Angkor, on the Maya. The difference is only in our attention. The cosmos has not grown distant. We have simply forgotten how to listen. Yet perhaps deep within us, that connection endures. When we stand beneath a clear sky and feel that quiet awe, that wordless recognition, it is the same feeling our ancestors knew. It is the earth reminding us of its long memory. For every civilization that ever looked up left something behind, not just monuments or myths, but a question. What is our place in the infinite? The stars have always been answering, softly. They say, you are part of us. You were born from the same dust that glows in our hearts. You are not beneath the heavens. You are within them. And so, when we uncover the ruins of old observatories and temples aligned to forgotten constellations, we are not just rediscovering history. We are rediscovering ourselves. The same curiosity that guided the builders of Stonehenge, the same reverence that raised the pyramids, the same wonder that filled the eyes of the Maya astronomers, it still lives within us. It is what drives us to explore the cosmos today, to send our machines beyond the solar wind, to look for meaning among the stars. We are, as we have always been, children of the sky, seeking our reflection in its light. Above every ruin, every crumbling wall, every buried stone, the stars continue their quiet pilgrimage. They move with patient certainty across the night, marking seasons long after the voices that named them have faded. The constellations do not care for empire or language. They simply are, the same patterns seen by shepherds in Sumer, by priests in Egypt, by dreamers in the jungles of the Yucatan. They are the oldest memory we share, and the first story we ever told. It is said that civilization began when humanity learned to look up and see meaning in the sky. Before we wrote words, we wrote constellations. Before we measured time, we watched the light of the moon touch the horizon. Each glimmer, each slow procession of stars, became part of a grand conversation between Earth and the infinite. In the dry highlands of Peru, the Nazca people etched vast shapes into the desert floor, hummingbirds, monkeys, and spirals stretching for miles. From the ground, they are invisible. Only from the sky do their forms come alive. For centuries, no one understood why they were made. But perhaps that is the point. The Nazca lines were not meant for human eyes alone. They were offerings to the heavens, immense prayers traced upon the bones of the earth, visible to gods who watched from above. Further east, in the Indus Valley, the cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro rose in perfect symmetry. Their builders may not have left temples to the stars, but their order reflects a cosmic ideal, the geometry of heaven mirrored on the ground. The ancient texts that followed, the Vedas, spoke of nakshatras, the lunar mansions through which the moon wandered. Time itself was mapped upon the sky, each constellation a home for divine rhythm. Even today, the traditions of astrology and cosmic harmony echo this ancient understanding, that the movements above are woven into the fate below. In the high deserts of Chaco Canyon, The ancestral Puebloans built their great houses, massive structures aligned with celestial events. On Fajada Butte, a carved spiral marks the sun's path with breathtaking precision. At the summer solstice, a narrow blade of light passes through stone slabs, illuminating the center of the spiral. To the people who watched, this was not mere science, it was ceremony. They had built a calendar not just of dates, but of meaning. When the sun returned to its mark, so too did the balance of life. Everywhere we look, the pattern repeats. In Ireland, Newgrange, a Neolithic tomb older than Stonehenge, greets the sunrise of the winter solstice. On that single morning each year, sunlight pierces a narrow passageway, illuminating a chamber where ancestors once lay. For those ancient builders, this was resurrection made visible. The return of light to the tomb was the return of life to the world. Their architecture was not only engineering, it was prayer in stone, a message written to the cosmos in the language of light. In the temples of Egypt, the stars were not distant. They were souls. The pharaohs became constellations upon death, their spirits joining the imperishable ones in the northern sky. The alignment of pyramids and tombs was designed to ensure this celestial rebirth, a journey through eternity, guided by the same stars that had watched over the Nile for millennia. To gaze at the heavens was to see the promise of immortality. The stars were proof that something endures. Across the ocean, the ancient Hawaiians built heiau stone temples oriented to celestial points. Their navigators, the wayfinders, memorized entire star lines, learning not only which constellations marked direction, but how the color of the ocean and the song of the wind could tell them where they were. They read the universe as one continuous body, where sky and sea, human and cosmos, were inseparable. Every voyage was an act of remembrance, a reaffirmation that humanity could still move in rhythm with the earth. The Babylonians, perhaps more than any early civilization, sought to make the heavens calculable. They observed planetary motion and recorded eclipses with extraordinary precision. Their work would echo through history, influencing Greek astronomers, Islamic scholars, and ultimately the modern science of astronomy. But beneath their mathematics lay something older, awe. They did not merely measure the stars, they listened to them. For them, every planet carried a divine message, every alignment a whisper of fate. The sky was not random. It was written in tension. And then came the Greeks, who sought reason in the constellations. From their minds emerged the first attempt to understand the cosmos not only as divine, but as natural, a place governed by beauty, order, and law. Pythagoras saw harmony in the movement of celestial spheres. Plato imagined the heavens as a reflection of perfect geometry. Aristarchus, long before Copernicus, suggested that the earth moved around the sun, an idea too vast for his time. Even when their ideas faded, their sense of wonder remained, carried like starlight into the future. But not all knowledge came from great empires. In the Arctic, the Inuit saw the stars as living stories, guides through the long polar nights. They named constellations after animals, spirits, and the patterns of migration. The sky was not distant, but immediate, a reflection of their survival. When the northern lights shimmered across the horizon, they did not see electricity or particles. They saw the souls of ancestors dancing above the ice. In that dance was both science and sacredness, two languages speaking the same truth. It is humbling to think how many ways humanity has reached for the stars, not only to understand them, but to belong among them. The Incas, the Egyptians, the Celts, the Chinese, the Polynesians, each looked upward and found themselves reflected. Each believed that by aligning their temples, their lives, and their calendars with the heavens, they could live in harmony with something eternal. And yet, we too are part of that continuum. When astronomers today look through telescopes and see galaxies billions of light years away, they are continuing the same act that built Stonehenge, that carved the pyramids, that aligned Machu Picchu. The tools have changed, but the yearning is the same. We still seek our reflection in the cosmos. We still build our meaning from the patterns of light. Perhaps that is the truest legacy of those forgotten civilizations. Not their cities or their stones, but their silence. For in that silence, under open sky, humanity learned humility. We are small, yes, but not insignificant. We are made of the same dust that glows in the stars. The carbon in our bones was forged in their fires. When we look upward, we are not gazing at strangers. We are looking homeward. The ancients knew this in their own way. They did not speak of atoms or cosmic background radiation, but they felt it, that pulse of connection between sky and soil, between the human breath and the galactic wind. When they built temples to the stars, they were not reaching outward but inward, trying to find the divine spark reflected in the heavens. And perhaps that is why those temples still move us today. They remind us that science and spirit were once the same act, to wonder, to listen, to align. We are the inheritors of that wonder. Each modern observatory, each satellite orbiting silently above the world, is another stone added to that ancient chain. From Göbekli Tepe's celestial pillars to the mirrored domes of Mauna Kea, it is all one story, humanity remembering the stars. And though our machines may now reach farther than our ancestors dreamed, our questions remain unchanged. Who are we in the vastness? Where did we come from? And what does it mean to be part of something so endless, so luminous, so quietly eternal? The stars do not answer in words. They answer in time, in the patience of light traveling across ages to touch our eyes. Every photon that reaches us carries a message billions of years old. You are never alone. The ancients heard it too, though they spoke in myths and songs instead of physics. It is the same message, translated through the language of eternity. And so, as we walk through the ruins of observatories carved in stone, as we study constellations that once ruled kings and farmers alike, we are reminded of the simplest truth, that to be human is to look up, to wonder, to remember, to listen to the slow heartbeat of the universe, and know, somehow, that it beats within us too. In the stillness of polar dawn, the world holds its breath. The air is so clear that light itself seems frozen, a slow silver whisper stretched across the horizon. Here, in the realm of ice and silence, the earth keeps its oldest secrets. Beneath the glaciers, beneath the snow that never melts, lie traces of civilizations long forgotten. Bones, tools, shelters, fragments of stories preserved by cold, waiting for the world to remember them. The ice is a perfect archivist. Unlike fire, it does not destroy. Unlike the sea, it does not scatter. It holds everything in suspension, the breath of mammoths, the pollen of lost forests, the footprints of people who walked where now only the wind travels. Every frozen layer is a page in the planet's memory, written not in ink, but in silence. In the far north of Siberia, on the Yana River, archaeologists uncovered the remains of one of humanity's oldest Arctic settlements. More than 30,000 years ago, people lived there, hunters who thrived at the edge of the Ice Age. They built shelters from mammoth bones, carved tools from ivory, and adorned themselves with beads made of shell and stone. The permafrost kept their world intact, freezing their gestures in time. To uncover such a site is to reach back into the first experiments of human adaptation, a reminder that even in the harshest conditions, civilization takes root where there is warmth of spirit. The glaciers do more than preserve human artifacts. They preserve the memory of climates, of ages. A core of ice is a timeline of air, tiny bubbles holding the breath of long-dead worlds. Through them, scientists can hear the rhythm of the planet's heart across millennia, its warm pulses, its frozen silences. Each layer tells a story of change, of civilizations rising and falling in synchrony with the Earth, its own cycles. For every city that bloomed along the Nile or the Euphrates, there was an echo in the cryosphere, a whisper of what the planet felt beneath its frozen skin. In the high mountains of the Andes, the ice has kept its vigil for centuries. There, in the peaks once sacred to the Inca, archaeologists have found mummies so perfectly preserved that their skin still carries the blush of youth. They were offerings, children given to the gods of the mountains in ancient rituals of devotion. When the snow buried them, it was not burial but transformation. Now, as the glaciers retreat, those faces emerge once more, eyes still closed in prayer. It is as if time itself is returning them, slowly, reverently, to the light. Further north, in the frozen tundras of Alaska and Canada, remnants of ancient camps emerge from melting ground. Hunters once followed herds of caribou across these vast plains, leaving behind tools, fire pits, and the faint traces of dwellings. As permafrost thaws, these fragments surface again, their stories thawing with them. They remind us that even the most desolate landscapes were once alive with laughter, language, and light. In Scandinavia, melting glaciers have revealed a flood of discoveries: arrows, clothing, and even wooden skis from the Bronze Age. Objects that once fell and disappeared beneath snow now reappear, perfectly preserved by cold. Each find is a conversation across time, a message from those who walked the same slopes thousands of years ago. The people of the North were not simply survivors. They were masters of their element. They read the weather like scripture, carved meaning into the ice, and wove their lives into the rhythm of the seasons. But perhaps the most haunting memories lie at the bottom of the world, Antarctica. Beneath miles of ice, beneath landscapes untouched by human settlement, lies a geological library older than any civilization. The continent was once lush and green, home to forests and rivers before drifting southward and freezing over. Beneath that ice, mountains rise higher than the Alps, valleys sink deeper than the Grand Canyon, and hidden lakes remain sealed in darkness for millions of years. Scientists drilling into those frozen depths have found microbial life still alive, organisms that have not seen the sun since before humanity existed. Antarctica remembers a world that predates us, and perhaps will outlast us. In the early 20th century, explorers like Ernest Shackleton and Robert Falcon Scott ventured into that desolate realm, chasing the last frontiers of human endurance. Their camps, still preserved in the cold, remain almost exactly as they left them: boots by the door, tins of biscuits unopened, journals frozen mid-thought. A century later, they stand as time capsules of human determination, trapped between ice and eternity. Even the air around them seems to hold its breath, unwilling to disturb the stillness of their dream. And yet, as the planet warms, the ice that once preserved memory begins to weep. Artifacts emerge faster than they can be studied. Ancient bodies reappear, fragile and exposed. The frozen library of the world is thawing, its pages dissolving into water. It is as though the earth, in its slow grief, is opening its archives before they vanish. What we find in those thawing layers is not only history, but warning, a reflection of impermanence written in meltwater. In Greenland, scientists have found the remnants of ancient forests buried beneath the ice sheet, roots, leaves, and pollen still intact. They tell of a time when the Arctic was green, when rivers flowed through valleys, now silent and white. The memory of that warmth still lingers, preserved beneath the frost. It reminds us that even the coldest places were once alive, and may be again. The Earth's memory is not fixed. It breathes, contracts, and releases, just as we do. The frozen world humbles us. Here, civilization loses its boundaries. Stone, bronze, and steel are all the same before the patience of ice. What remains is not power or empire, but essence. The quiet persistence of life, the echo of footsteps long vanished, the fingerprints of warmth in an age of frost. The ice teaches us that memory is not only what endures, but what transforms. When glaciers melt, they become rivers. When snow falls, it becomes nourishment for forests unseen. Even in thawing, the Earth continues its cycle of renewal. We often imagine civilization as something separate from nature, fragile against its vastness. But here, amid the silence of frozen time, it becomes clear that we are not apart from the Earth's story. We are one of its chapters, written briefly in the language of stone, water, and breath. The ice remembers us not as conquerors, but as participants in its endless conversation. Perhaps that is why standing on a glacier feels sacred. The sound beneath your feet, a faint, slow crack, is the sound of deep time shifting. The air is older than words. Each gust carries whispers from eras when mammoths walked and stars shone brighter in cleaner skies. To walk there is to walk through memory itself. In the end, the civilizations beneath the ice and snow are not only the ones we have lost, but the ones we are still uncovering, and the ones that may yet emerge. For as the ice retreats, new stories surface. Ancient seeds sprout once more, awakening after tens of thousands of years. Frozen lakes reveal their hidden ecosystems. Even in loss, the Earth renews its narrative. The ice melts, but the memory remains, not gone, only changed. And so, when we look upon the frozen lands and think of emptiness, we are mistaken. The silence is full. It holds every heartbeat, every spark, every trace of what has been. It is not emptiness, but eternity. And if we listen closely, beneath the wind, beneath the sigh of snow, we might still hear the soft pulse of forgotten civilizations, preserved in frost, waiting for the warmth of remembrance. There are places where rivers no longer flow, where only the whisper of their memory remains. Dry valleys stretch across the land like the ghostly outlines of veins once full of life. The wind traces their paths, lifting the dust of ages into slow, spiraling dances. And beneath that dust, the Earth remembers water. Rivers have always been the arteries of civilization. They nourished the first cities, guided migration, and carved the boundaries between kingdoms. To live beside a river was to live beside continuity, the promise that tomorrow would come. But time, like water, changes course. And when the rivers vanished, the worlds they sustained faded with them. One such world once flourished along the banks of a river that no longer exists, the Sarasvati. In the deserts of modern India and Pakistan, archaeologists have unearthed the bones of a civilization older than most empires, a network of cities that stretched across the plains. Homes, wells, pottery, seals carved with symbols no one can yet read. These were the people of the Indus and the Sarasvati, a culture of engineers and dreamers, traders and artists, whose cities aligned with stars. Satellite imagery reveals the traces of the Sarasvati, a river that once rivaled the Ganges in size. Its dry channel, now buried beneath sand, runs for hundreds of kilometers. It was fed by glaciers from the Himalayas, carrying water through a land of abundance. But as the Earth's climate shifted and tectonic movements altered its course, the river began to die. Without its flow, the cities along its banks withered. People left their homes, migrating eastward toward the Ganges basin, taking with them fragments of language, ritual, and art. The Sarasvati disappeared, but not entirely. It became a river of myth, flowing forever in the realm of memory and scripture. In the ancient texts of India, the Sarasvati is described as a river of wisdom, a goddess of speech and song. Even after her waters vanished, she continued to flow in the minds of poets and saints. And perhaps that is how civilizations truly endure, not through stone, but through the persistence of their stories. Across the world, the same pattern unfolds. In the deserts of northern Africa, beneath the golden waves of sand, the Sahara once bloomed with lakes and rivers. There were hippos and fish, forests and rain. The people who lived there painted their world on cave walls, giraffes, elephants, and boats drifting across blue water. But over thousands of years, the monsoon retreated south. The lakes dried, the rivers faded into dust. And what was once an Eden became an ocean of sand. Yet even here, the earth keeps evidence of its greener days. Buried deep beneath the dunes are the channels of ancient rivers, revealed by radar and satellite networks that once connected human communities across vast distances. Some archaeologists believe these vanished waterways guided the migration of early humans out of Africa, their dry beds acting as silent roads through time. When the rivers died, the people moved on, but the memory of flowing water remained in their myths, their songs, their longing for paradise lost. In China, the Tarim Basin tells a similar story, a place where rivers gave birth to mystery. Here, in the heart of the Taklamakan Desert, lie the remains of cities swallowed by sand. Once, the Tarim River and its tributaries fed a network of oasis kingdoms, Lulan, Nia, and Miran, waypoints on the ancient Silk Road. Their people traded silk for lapis, jade for spices, and carried stories between east and west. But as the rivers shifted course, the oases dried. The caravans stopped coming. The cities turned to dust. When explorers rediscovered them centuries later, they found mummies with European features preserved in the arid air, their clothes woven in patterns found nowhere else, their languages lost to time. They are echoes of a forgotten world that once thrived at the edge of survival, a reminder that even in the harshest deserts, civilization can bloom, if only for a while. Further west, along the edges of the Sahara, another story unfolds, that of the Niger River and the cities of West Africa. In the bend of that great, slow river, empires rose: Ghana, Mali, Songhai. They were kingdoms of gold and wisdom, where scholars gathered in the libraries of Timbuktu, and caravans of salt crossed the endless dunes. But when droughts came, the river shrank, trade routes faltered, and the centers of learning fell silent. Sand covered the roads once alive with merchants and poets. Yet beneath those dunes, manuscripts still sleep, the written dreams of an age when water and wisdom flowed together. The Niger continues to flow, though not as it once did. Its course meanders like the memory of its past, bending, shifting, adapting. It survives where others vanished, a living reminder that endurance often lies not in strength, but in flexibility. The story of vanished rivers is not only about loss. It is also about transformation, the resilience of life in the face of change. When the rivers dried, people did not vanish. They learned to listen to the land in new ways. They dug wells, built canals, prayed for rain. They followed clouds and stars, learning the language of drought and abundance. In doing so, they became part of the earth's own rhythm, ebbing and flowing with its breath. Even today, the pattern continues. The Aral Sea, once one of the largest inland bodies of water on Earth, has nearly disappeared within a single lifetime. Its fishing villages now stand hundreds of kilometers from the shore, their boats stranded in sand. Rusting hulls rest on the desert floor, monuments to a river system diverted by human ambition. But even there, life begins again. Salt-tolerant plants take root in the cracked earth. Birds return to the new wetlands, forming at the edges of what remains. The earth heals slowly, quietly, in ways we rarely notice. To stand in a dried riverbed is to feel the passage of worlds. You can trace with your fingers the grooves carved by water thousands of years ago. You can feel how the land remembers flow, the way it curves, the way it cradles emptiness. And in that emptiness, there is beauty. For though the rivers are gone, the valleys remain, waiting, patient, open to the next cycle of rain. The lesson of the vanished rivers is simple and eternal. Nothing is lost that cannot be transformed. Water, even when gone, becomes air, becomes cloud, becomes rain again. Civilizations, too, rise, dry, and return in new forms. We are all participants in the hydrology of memory, carried from one age to the next, evaporating and condensing across time. So when we walk through deserts that once were seas, or across valleys that once echoed with water, we are not walking through ruins. We are walking through the unfinished sentences of Earth's story. And if we listen closely, we might still hear it, the sound of rivers that are no longer there, whispering softly beneath the wind, promising that even after drought, the rain will return. But perhaps the truest rivers were never made of water. They run through us still, unseen but constant. Every heartbeat is a pulse of the ancient tide. Every breath carries a trace of those vanished worlds, the moisture of forgotten rain, the minerals of mountains ground to dust. We are the continuation of the rivers that came before us, flowing now through veins instead of valleys. And maybe that is the Earth's quiet secret, that what it loses in one form, it keeps in another. When a river dries, it does not die. It becomes something new. Its bed hardens into stone, then cracks, and the cracks cradle seeds. Life takes root where water once ran. The rhythm of absence becomes the rhythm of renewal. In time, what was once a floodplain becomes a meadow, a forest, a home. The earth wastes nothing, not even emptiness. There are still places where you can feel this transformation, standing on the threshold between what was and what is. In Namibia's desert, the Kusib River flows only for a few weeks each year, but in those weeks, it brings the desert alive. Grasses sprout, insects awaken, antelope gather to drink. Then it vanishes again, leaving behind a green scar across the sand, proof that even absence can be fertile. In the American Southwest, the ruins of the ancestral pueblones cling to cliffs, above vanished rivers. They built their homes in stone alcoves to catch the last light of the day, painted spirals on walls to track the turning of the sun. When drought came, they moved on, carrying with them stories of rain and stars. Their migration was not a failure, but a continuation of the cycle. To follow water is to follow life. And in Australia's interior, the dry channels of the ancient Lake Eyre basin still shimmer after rare rains. For a brief, impossible season, birds flock from across the continent, the salt plains turn to mirror, and fish appear as if conjured from air. Then it ends, the water evaporates, the land returns to silence. But that brief return is enough. It reminds the earth, and us, that impermanence is not the opposite of beauty. It is its foundation. Maybe this is why rivers have always been sacred to us, why we build our cities beside them, pray beside them, bury our dead near their banks. A river teaches what permanence cannot, that strength lies in surrender and endurance in flow. To resist change is to dry. To move with it is to live. Even when they vanish, rivers leave behind the pattern of resilience, a map drawn in dust, pointing toward the next beginning, because the earth is not mourning the rivers it lost. It is remembering them, and in remembering, it prepares the ground for what will come next, the next rain, the next civilization, the next stream that will rise beside the sound of water. There are forests that no longer sway. Their branches no longer move with the wind, and yet, in their stillness, they breathe in another way. They have become stone, the trees of ancient worlds, turned to mineral in memory. What once was soft bark and leaf is now quartz and jasper, veins of color frozen in time. These are the forgotten gardens, the forests of stone. In the deserts of Arizona, the ground glitters with petrified wood, trunks scattered like bones of a vanished age. They lie under open sky, massive and immovable. Yet once they grew tall in a humid world filled with ferns, cycads, and roaring rivers. 200 million years ago, this place was not desert but delta, a floodplain where rivers carried volcanic ash and silt. When the trees fell, they were buried quickly, sealed away from decay. Minerals seeped into their cells, turning wood to stone, ring by ring, fiber by fiber. The result is a miracle of patience, the slow alchemy of time itself. To walk among these fossilized trunks is to walk through the memory of rain. Every pattern in their rings is a story of seasons: drought, abundance, wind, stillness. They are diaries written by sunlight and storm, preserved not on paper but in crystal. Touching them, one can feel both life and death at once, the warmth of what once was, the endurance of what remains. Yet Arizona is not alone. Petrified forests exist on nearly every continent, in Argentina, in Greece, in Lesbos, where an ancient woodland lies entombed beneath volcanic ash, its roots and branches still reaching through the stone. In Egypt's eastern desert, the petrified forest of Cairo holds the remains of trees that shaded the earth 40 million years ago, when the Sahara was a sea of green. And in Antarctica, beneath ice and rock, paleobotanists have uncovered the impressions of ancient forests that once circled the South Pole, when the world was warmer and trees grew where now there is only silence and snow. These stone forests tell a story of change. They remind us that the world we know has worn many faces. Oceans becoming deserts, tundras turning to grasslands, mountains rising where there once was sea. Each transformation leaves behind an echo, and those echoes are the fossils we find today. They are not merely remnants of what once lived. They are evidence that nothing truly disappears. Everything in time becomes part of something else. To imagine those ancient forests alive is to glimpse a world before ours, a sky filled not with birds, but with dragonflies the size of hawks, a ground humming with amphibians and insects, a sun filtered through canopies that have long since turned to dust. And yet, through the patience of geology, those forests remain, their shapes remembered by stone. The petrified trees are time made visible. They do not erode easily. Their colors deepen under the sun. Reds, golds, and purples shimmer where sap once ran. The wind, in its passing, polishes them smooth, as though it too honors their endurance. Here, even decay is beautiful. It takes millions of years to happen. Somewhere deep in each fossilized ring lies a lesson about impermanence. The trees that turned to stone did not resist the earth's will. They surrendered to it. They allowed themselves to become part of another form, not less alive, but differently alive. Their transformation is not a tragedy, but a continuation. They remind us that survival is not always movement. Sometimes it is stillness, waiting, becoming. And perhaps this is why we are drawn to them. When we walk through a petrified forest, we are not only walking through space, we are walking through time. The stones beneath our feet once cast shadows, once felt rain, once heard the first murmurs of wind. They connect the living and the ancient in a single breath. In Patagonia, Argentina, the petrified forest of Sarmiento stretches across a barren plateau. The trunks there are vast, so large that some have fractured into segments under the weight of ages. The air is dry and still, the horizon endless. It feels like a place where time has stopped, where the earth holds its breath between epochs. And yet, even here, there is life, small shrubs, moss, and the occasional bird nesting in the hollow of a fallen fossil tree. The living and the petrified share the same ground, side by side, like two verses of the same poem. Scientists study these forests to understand ancient climates, the levels of carbon dioxide, the patterns of rainfall, the tilt of the planet itself. But beyond the science, there is something spiritual in their silence. They remind us that everything we see is temporary, and yet nothing is ever truly lost. Every forest that falls becomes soil, and from soil, new life rises. The petrified trees simply paused that process, suspended it, like a breath held for eternity. Even the stones themselves continue to change, slowly, invisibly. They erode grain by grain, carried by the same wind that once rustled their leaves. One day, they too will crumble into dust, joining the riverbeds and sands of another future world. The circle will close and begin again. The earth, in its wisdom, turns even forests into fossils, not out of cruelty, but remembrance. It preserves what it loves, the way a mind keeps a dream long after waking. The petrified wood is that dream, the echo of a world where time was slower, gentler, endless. And though those trees no longer grow, they still speak in their silence, whispering, "All that is alive must change." But in changing, nothing truly ends. To stand among them is to feel the pulse of deep time, not the ticking of human hours, but the slow rhythm of the planet itself. And in that rhythm, there is peace. The peace of knowing that even the smallest life, even the briefest bloom, becomes part of something eternal. So we walk through these stone gardens quietly, not as explorers, but as guests. Because beneath our feet lies the patience of the world, forests that turned themselves into memory, trees that chose to live forever by becoming stone. There are places where time ended in an instant, where ash fell like snow, and snow fell like ash, where a city's final breath became its preservation. These are the places held between fire and ice, the Earth's two oldest elements of remembrance. In the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, the city of Pompeii sleeps. Once alive with laughter, trade, and the scent of bread in ovens, it was silenced in a single day in the year 79 CE. When the volcano erupted, its fury rolled down the mountain in waves of fire and ash. Yet in that destruction, a strange mercy unfolded. The ash covered everything, streets, temples, homes, and sealed them away from time. Beneath that gray shroud, Pompeii was preserved like a photograph in stone. Centuries later, when the city was rediscovered, it was as though the people had only just stepped away. A loaf still sat in an oven, coins scattered across a table, dogs curled in corners as if dreaming. And the people, their forms immortalized in plaster, were caught mid-motion, reaching, shielding, embracing. In their frozen gestures, humanity found a mirror. Pompeii became more than a ruin. It became a pause in history, a moment that refused to fade. But Pompeii was not alone. Across the bay, Herculaneum was buried too, its wooden beams carbonized, but intact, its scrolls turned to charcoal, yet still legible under modern scans. Here, scholars found entire libraries, the only ones to survive from the Roman world. The words of ancient philosophers slept inside blackened cylinders, unread for 2 millennia, waiting for the light of technology to return their voices. Fire, in destroying, had also preserved. There is something paradoxical in this, that the very forces that erase can also protect. Volcanoes create land, even as they consume it. They are both endings and beginnings, reminders that life and death are the same act viewed from different sides of time. Across the world, other civilizations met the same fate. In the islands of the Aegean, the city of Akrotiri on Santorini lies entombed beneath volcanic ash, like a dream preserved in dust. Its frescoes are still bright with color, blues and ochres untouched by centuries. There are no bodies there, only silence, suggesting that the people had time to flee before the mountain's heart gave way. And yet their homes, their art, their stories remain, whispering of a Bronze Age world that vanished into myth, perhaps even inspiring the legend of Atlantis. Far to the north, where the world freezes instead of burns, another kind of preservation takes hold. In Greenland and the Arctic, layers of ice hold entire centuries in suspension. Each snowfall presses down upon the last, trapping the air, the pollen, the breath of old forests. Scientists drill deep into the ice and extract cylinders of time, ice cores that reveal the composition of the atmosphere thousands of years ago. Through them, we can hear the echoes of climates that shaped human history. Droughts, floods, extinctions, rebirths. The ice is a library too, one written not in ink, but in frozen light. And within that frozen world lie human stories as well. The Norse once settled Greenland, building farms and churches along the fjords. For nearly 5 centuries, they endured the cold, trading walrus ivory, raising cattle on thin pastures, writing their sagas by whale oil lamps. Then, as the climate cooled and trade routes shifted, their colonies vanished. The churches were left to the wind, the farms reclaimed by moss and frost. No battle ended their story, only silence did. Archaeologists still find their bones in frozen soil, their tools and ornaments perfectly preserved. Even their DNA, sealed within the permafrost, remains unbroken, a kind of biological fossil, still whispering the details of their lives to modern science. The ice became their tomb and their archive. In the Andes, high above the world, the same paradox unfolds. There, the cold preserves not cities, but offerings. Mummified children, sacrificed to the mountain gods by the Inca, have been found, curled in eternal sleep at the peaks of volcanoes. Their skin, hair, and clothing remain untouched by time. They rest where air thins to silence, their faces serene, as though dreaming of the world below. To look upon them is to feel the tenderness of an ancient belief that death could be a bridge, not an end. And in Siberia, the melting permafrost gives up the bodies of mammoths and the traces of prehistoric people, tools still sharp, fires still blackened with soot. The earth, in thawing, releases its memories, as though it can no longer hold them. Each discovery feels like a breath exhaled after millennia of stillness. Fire and ice, opposites that meet in purpose. Both strip away what is temporary and reveal what endures. Volcanoes turn forests into stone, cities into relics. Ice captures life mid-motion, suspending it in its final gesture. Between them, the story of the earth is written in two scripts, one of heat, one of cold. To live between these extremes is the destiny of humankind. We build in the shadow of mountains and along the edges of glaciers, drawn by danger as much as beauty. We are creatures of thresholds, forever choosing the edges of the world as our home. Perhaps this is because we, too, are shaped by fire and ice. We carry warmth in our blood and cold in our bones. Our hearts burn with desire, but our minds preserve, analyze, and hold still. Like the planet itself, we destroy and remember in equal measure. Pompeii's plaster forms and Greenland's ice cores are not opposites, they are companions. One shows how life ends suddenly, the other how it fades slowly. Both are reminders that time is not a line, but a circle, a breath drawn and released. To walk among the ruins of a city buried by ash, or to stand upon the glacier's ancient ice, is to stand between moments of becoming. You feel the pulse of the earth beneath your feet, the slow, patient turning of epochs, the quiet acceptance of change. And in that silence, one begins to understand the earth is not cruel nor kind. It is remembering itself. Every eruption, every freeze, is a gesture of memory, a way of holding what would otherwise be lost. When the next volcano awakens, when the next glacier melts, new stories will be sealed and revealed. And long after we are gone, perhaps someone or something will uncover our own remains, held beneath the layers of time, and wonder at who we were, and what dreams we carried into the fire and the frost. Beneath the rolling skin of the ocean lies a second earth, one veiled by water, silence, and distance. It is a place where sunlight fades into memory, and the sounds of the surface are swallowed whole. There, time moves differently. Every ripple above becomes an echo below, distorted and eternal. The ocean does not forget. It keeps its memories close, pressed between layers of silt and coral. Whole civilizations have slipped beneath its surface, temples, harbors, and homes, drawn into the slow rhythm of tides that never end. To dive into these waters is to descend not only into depth, but into history. In the Mediterranean, off the coast of Egypt, rests the ancient city of Heracleion, once a thriving port, now a ghostly shadow beneath the waves. For centuries, it was known only in myth, a place spoken of by Herodotus and dismissed by scholars. Then, divers found it, columns and statues still standing in the quiet green light, inscriptions still sharp against the stone. There were ships sealed in mud, gold coins gleaming faintly through the silt, and the great statue of Hapi, god of the Nile's flood, resting serenely among the seagrass. The sea had not destroyed Heracleion. It had hidden it, preserving its spirit in suspension. And nearby, the legendary city of Canopus shares the same fate. It lies sprawled across the sea, its streets now the home of fish and anemones. Divers move slowly through its ruins, like ghosts visiting other ghosts. Here, amphorae rest where markets once stood. Temples lean gently, their columns softened by coral. It is not death, it is transformation. Further east, near the shores of India, another mystery stirs beneath the waves. Off the coast of Gujarat lies the underwater city of Dwarka, a place some believe to be connected to the mythic kingdom of Lord Krishna. Sonar scans reveal long lines of stone, carved blocks, and the traces of harbors long forgotten. Whether it was myth or memory, the sea has claimed it now. In its silence, legend and archaeology meet in a single breath. But not all underwater worlds are ancient. The ocean holds newer ghosts too, ships, submarines, and aircraft swallowed by storms or war. Each one becomes a reef, a new kind of monument. Rust turns to color as coral takes hold. Schools of fish weave through open hatches. Sharks patrol the corridors of steel that once carried men and dreams. In time, the wrecks lose their names and become living sculpture, the sea's own art, shaped by salt and patience. There is one ship that carries the weight of millions of stories, the Titanic. Resting 2 miles beneath the North Atlantic, it has lain in darkness for more than a century. When it sank, it carried not just passengers, but a symbol of human ambition, pride, and fragility. Discovered decades later, it was not the shining marvel remembered in books, but a rusted, decaying cathedral. Yet even in ruin, it feels sacred. Its staircases, chandeliers, and porcelain dishes remain like offerings to time itself. The sea has not judged it, only accepted it. The ocean's embrace is impartial. It swallows kings and fishermen, empires and islands alike. Atlantis, whether myth or memory, is the name we gave to this truth, that nothing built upon water lasts forever. Perhaps the story of Atlantis was never about a single city, but about all of them. Every drowned harbor, every sunken monument, every ruin beneath the tide is a piece of that collective myth. Together, they form a mosaic of loss and renewal, a testament to our longing to build even where the sea will one day return. In Japan, the Yonaguni Monument lies beneath the waves, a colossal, stair-stepped structure carved from stone. Some say it is natural, others that it is the remnant of an ancient civilization erased by rising seas. Its edges are sharp, its geometry precise, yet softened by millennia of current and coral. Divers swim through its corridors in reverent silence. Whether made by hands or by nature, Yonaguni reminds us that the boundary between the two is thin. The earth itself shapes beauty that feels human, and humans shape worlds that mimic the earth. Beneath the Black Sea, another kind of memory rests. There, deep layers of mud preserve the remains of ancient coastlines. Entire river valleys flooded when the sea broke through thousands of years ago. Some scientists believe this event was the origin of the Great Flood myths, a real catastrophe remembered through story, reshaped into legend. The sea, in this way, is both destroyer and storyteller. It erases with one hand and writes with the other. And still we return to it. We build our homes near its edge, our cities upon its coasts, our harbors in its arms. The ocean draws us with the same force that it once drew the moon, a pull not of gravity, but of memory. It reminds us of where we began, for life itself first stirred in the depths. In a way, every breath we take is a remembrance of the sea. When storms pass over, when the waves grow dark and heavy, the ocean speaks in the oldest voice of the planet. It tells us of cycles, of rise and fall, of calm and fury. It reminds us that what we build is always temporary, but what we are is eternal. For even as cities drown, humanity endures in new forms. Our curiosity, our resilience, our need to know what lies beneath. Deep-sea explorers move now through the wreckage of ages. Their lights pierce the darkness like artificial stars. They find amphory beside modern propellers, marble beside metal. In the sea, all eras coexist. It is a museum without walls, curated by the tides. Somewhere in those depths, a bell still hangs within a sunken ship. It will never ring again, yet when currents pass through, it vibrates faintly. A note too low for human ears, but still real. Perhaps that is how the sea remembers, not in sight or sound, but in vibration, in the slow hum of existence. If one could listen closely enough, perhaps beneath the weight of the ocean's breath, one might hear it, the faint echo of footsteps upon vanished streets, the whisper of sails on vanished winds, the sigh of worlds that once touched the sun. And above, the surface rolls on, unaware, untroubled. Ships pass, clouds drift, and light plays upon the water, hiding the ruins beneath. But the ocean remembers. It holds every story, every fall, every song. And perhaps, when the last light fades from our own cities, it will hold us too, not as lost things, but as part of the great continuum of memory that has always belonged to the sea. Far below where sunlight can reach, the sea floor blooms with life that glows in the dark. Tiny sparks drift like constellations suspended in a slow-moving universe. Jellyfish pulse like lanterns. Fish shimmer with inner light. Even here, in what seems like silence, the earth breathes. If one could hover there long enough, one would see that the ocean floor is not empty. There are walls half buried in silt, ridges that might once have been roads, and patterns that do not seem random. Some belong to human hands, others to the patient work of the planet itself. Together, they form a script that no one living can read in full, a language of stone and salt. Near the coasts of Greece, archaeologists have found pavements beneath the waves, arranged in circles and grids. For years, they were thought to be ruins. Then new studies revealed that bacteria and chemical reactions had shaped them, creating structures that imitated architecture. The ocean, it seems, sometimes dreams of cities. It builds its own illusions, as if to remind us that even nature carries imagination. And yet, there are places where no doubt remains. In the Bay of Cambay in western India, sonar has traced long avenues and rectangular blocks deep beneath the water. Artifacts brought up, beads, tools, fragments of pottery, date to a time when much of this area was still dry land. If confirmed, these would belong to one of humanity's earliest urban experiments. But whether city or settlement, what matters most is what it tells us. That coastlines shift, that what seems eternal is only temporary. As the last ice age ended, glaciers melted and the seas rose, not slowly, as we imagine, but in surges that redrew the map of the world. Doggerland, once a vast plain connecting Britain to Europe, vanished beneath the North Sea. Its rivers, forests, and campsites now lie preserved under mud. Fishermen sometimes pull up antlers, tools, even bones, reminders that there was once a world where the sea now moves. Doggerland's story is not unique. All around the planet, the ocean has claimed the edges of human memory. In the Caribbean, where stone roads lead into blue water. In the Pacific, where terraces disappear beneath coral. In the Gulf of Kamhat, where sonar sings of buried streets. The water gives and takes in equal measure. It offers food, passage, and reflection, but it also takes back what is borrowed. Civilizations have always built at the threshold, drawn by trade, by beauty, by the endless horizon. To live beside the sea is to live beside impermanence. Sometimes the loss is sudden, an earthquake, a storm, a tidal wave. At other times, it is so gradual The generations pass before anyone notices the retreat of land. In both, the result is the same: the merging of human space with the infinite patience of the ocean. What remains is neither ruin nor grave, but something in between, a liminal world where coral and memory grow side by side. Divers who visit these places often speak of a strange feeling, a sense of trespass. It is not fear, but reverence. To swim among the columns of Pavlopetri off the coast of Greece, a city older than most pyramids, is to feel the presence of those who once walked there. Streets still curve as they did when traders brought fish and shell, when children played near the water's edge. Now fish dart through doorways, and seagrass sways like curtains in the tide. It is as though the city still breathes, only slower, in rhythm with the sea's long exhalation. The ocean, when calm, seems forgiving. But beneath that calm lies power beyond imagination. Volcanic islands rise and fall. Atolls form where mountains once stood, and tectonic plates drift like continents in sleep. Each motion shapes the story of what sinks and what survives. In the Aegean, the island of Santorini still bears the scar of an explosion that ended an age, perhaps even the Minoan world itself. Ash and sea combine to erase a chapter of civilization, leaving behind whispers that became the myth of Atlantis. We do not know if the myth is true, but we know that somewhere, something like it happened. The memory of water carries truth even when the names are lost. In the silence between tides, one can sense the continuity. A bronze mirror lies buried beside a broken amphora. Above it, coral grows, and above that, a school of silver fish move like a shifting sky. Each layer is a moment, the human, the natural, the timeless, all woven together by water. If the ocean could speak, it might say, nothing ends. Everything becomes. There are those who dream of raising these cities, of reclaiming what the sea has taken. But perhaps they are already where they belong. Beneath the waves, freed from weather and war, they rest in perfect equilibrium. No one claims them, no one rules them. They have returned to the planet, to the cycle that made them. And so, when we stand on a beach and look toward the horizon, we are not just watching the ocean, we are looking at history made liquid. Each wave that breaks upon the sand carries particles of forgotten worlds, ground to dust by time. Each grain beneath our feet may once have been a brick, a bone, or a tool. The boundary between land and sea is only a pause, a breathing space in the planet's endless transformation. Perhaps that is the sea's greatest lesson, that change is not loss, and that disappearance is not death. What sinks today may rise again in another form, another age. For the ocean is not an ending, but a turning, a deep, slow wheel of renewal that has turned since the world began. And still, in every depth, in every shadow, life persists. Coral grows where marble once gleamed. Fish build homes in the crevices of broken walls. The ocean does not mourn. It transforms. It takes our most fragile creations and makes them eternal in another way, through motion, through stillness, through the quiet art of memory. So when we imagine the lost civilizations beneath our feet, we might also imagine the ones beneath the waves, not gone, but dreaming, their outlines glowing faintly in the mind of the earth. And as long as the tides rise and fall, their story continues, a story written not in words, but in the endless movement of water, the oldest and gentlest of all archives. There are places on this planet where the line between the living and the forgotten blurs completely, where walls breathe, where roots cradle the memory of kings, and where every fallen leaf is another layer of time. These are the forest kingdoms, worlds reclaimed by green silence. The forest does not rush. It waits. It grows slowly, softly, over stone and story alike. What once were temples become mountains of moss. What once were roads become rivers of shade. And through it all, the trees rise, tall, patient, eternal, as though protecting what humanity once built. Deep in the heart of Cambodia, the ancient city of Angkor rests beneath a canopy of emerald light. Centuries ago, it was the pulse of the Khmer Empire, a vast network of temples, canals, and reservoirs that mirrored the heavens in its design. At its peak, Angkor was among the largest cities in the world. But time and the slow shifting of climate turned the land against it. Monsoons waned. Rivers changed course. And as the people moved on, the forest moved in. Now, the ruins of Angkor are alive in a different way. Roots the size of pillars grip walls of sandstone, their tendrils weaving through the windows of temples. Birds nest in the hollows of statues. The air hums with cicadas and memory. When the sun filters through the leaves, it feels as though the forest itself is exhaling the past, releasing it gently, not as tragedy, but as renewal. The most famous of these ruins, Taprom, is a cathedral of living wood. Ceiba and fig trees tower over crumbling shrines, their roots coiling like serpents across stone. And yet, rather than destroy, the trees hold the structure together, embracing it, preserving it. It is a paradox of beauty, nature both the devourer and the savior. Nearby, at Angkor Thom in Bayon, towers of smiling stone still gaze outward through the jungle. Their faces, serene, timeless, seem to acknowledge the forest that has become their final kingdom. They do not resist it. They belong to it now. Far to the east, another forest guards another civilization. In the Amazon basin, hidden beneath the endless canopy, lie the traces of cities so vast that they were once thought impossible. For centuries, explorers dismissed local legends of great urban centers in the jungle as myth. How could millions live among such tangled wilderness? But modern technology has rewritten the story. LiDAR scans from aircraft have revealed grids, causeways, and plazas stretching for miles, a network of settlements connected like a green web. Beneath the vines and roots lie remnants of pyramids and earthworks, designed with mathematical precision. The forest had hidden them, yes, but it had also kept them safe. Archaeologists now believe that the pre-Columbian Amazon supported complex societies long before European contact. What was once dismissed as an endless, untouched wilderness may have been, in truth, a living mosaic, a vast network of cities, gardens, and rivers reshaped by human hands. Beneath the canopy, traces of geometric earthworks lie buried under centuries of leaf and loam. They speak of people who knew how to work with the forest, not against it. They grew orchards instead of fields, turning the wild into something that was neither garden nor jungle, but both. For centuries, this vision lay hidden beneath green silence. The forest reclaimed its monuments, and time softened its edges. When early explorers drifted down the Amazon's arteries, they saw only the unbroken wall of trees and assumed it had always been so. They called it a wilderness, a place where humanity had never thrived. But the soil tells another story. Beneath the dark layer of humus lies terra preta, an ancient, fertile black earth made by human hands. Charcoal, bone, and compost were mixed into the ground, creating an ecosystem that could renew itself across generations. It is one of the most enduring legacies of forgotten civilizations, a testament to their quiet genius. In the depths of the rainforest, the ruins are faint, not towering pyramids or stone temples, but the subtle geometry of ditches and embankments, circular plazas swallowed by vines. Here, civilization took a softer form. It built in harmony with its surroundings, allowing nature to eventually fold its creations back into itself. This is why so much of the Amazon's human past feels invisible. It was never built to defy time, only to live within it. Across the ages, rivers shifted. Forests grew and retreated. Civilizations rose with the floods and fell with the droughts. Yet the memory of these people endures in fragments of pottery, in charcoal-rich soils, and in the faint outlines captured by satellites peering through the foliage. Each discovery redraws our understanding of the past, reminding us that the line between wilderness and civilization has always been more porous than we imagined. Beyond the forests, other forgotten landscapes lie drowned and buried, lost to rising seas and shifting sands. Every continent bears their traces, from the coasts of India to the shores of Japan. Beneath the waves, cities once stood where now fish drift through coral-covered ruins. To walk the earth is to walk above worlds we no longer see, worlds claimed by water, time, and silence. After the last ice age, the planet warmed, and the oceans rose by over 100 meters. Valleys filled, islands disappeared, and entire coastlines were redrawn. What had been fertile plains became seabeds. Ancient rivers, once flowing through broad estuaries, now snake invisibly beneath the sea. It is estimated that nearly 10% of early human settlements now lie underwater, their stories sealed away by the slow pulse of a changing planet. Off the coast of India lies the Gulf of Kanhat, where sonar scans have revealed what may be the remnants of man-made structures, patterns of stone and geometry resting beneath layers of silt. Some scientists interpret them cautiously as natural formations, others as possible traces of human activity dating back more than 9,000 years. Whatever their true nature, they evoke an ancient truth, that civilization's memory is incomplete, and the ocean's floor may hold chapters still unread. Farther east, near the Japanese island of Yonaguni, massive terraces of stone descend into the deep blue. Divers speak of staircases, platforms, and walls, a submerged monument that seems both natural and intentional. Some say it is a temple built by unknown hands before the sea reclaimed it. Others see only the artistry of geological time. But standing there, among the currents and the silence, the boundary between the human and the natural begins to blur. Perhaps it is both nature shaping stone and humanity shaping meaning. In places like these, the imagination drifts easily. One cannot help but wonder what stories were lost as the seas rose. The people who watched the tides climb higher each generation, what songs did they sing of the vanishing shore? What memories did they carry inland to whisper to their children about the lands beneath the water? The myths that echo through cultures across the world, of floods, of drowned kingdoms, of gods reshaping the earth, may be more than mere metaphor. They might be the emotional fossils of real events, encoded in story rather than stone. As continents flooded and climates shifted, humanity learned to adapt, to move, to remember. The shorelines we inhabit today are not the same ones our ancestors walked. Beneath every beach lies another, older beach, layers of human memory pressed under sand and salt. The waves that reach our feet have been touching the ruins of forgotten worlds for millennia. Even now, modern technology continues to peel back the ocean's skin. Sonar, satellite imaging, and submersible drones reveal structures hidden for 10,000 years. Some are unmistakably human, harbors, roads, and dwellings now smothered in coral, while others remain ambiguous, their lines too ancient to categorize. Science advances, but mystery endures. The sea keeps its secrets, yielding them only in fragments. In the end, these discoveries remind us of a deeper truth. The earth is not static. It breathes, shifts, and renews itself in endless cycles. The land we think eternal has drowned before and will drown again. Civilizations rise not on solid ground, but on the back of a restless planet. Every shore is temporary, every monument a whisper before the tide. And yet we endure, because memory, like the sea, flows ever onward. Beneath the vast blue of the South Pacific, there lies a continent, almost invisible, almost forgotten. Its mountains do not pierce the clouds. Its plains are drowned. Yet in the quiet language of geology, it is as real as any land we walk upon. This is Zealandia, the world's hidden eighth continent. Long ago, Zealandia was part of Gondwana, the great southern supercontinent that also gave rise to Antarctica, Australia, and South America. Around 85 million years ago, it began to break away, slowly drifting into isolation. But unlike its siblings, Zealandia did not stay afloat. Its crust thinned and sagged, surrendering to the ocean's weight. Over millions of years, it sank, leaving only a scattering of islands above the waves, the peaks we now call New Zealand and New Caledonia. For centuries, this lost continent was only myth. Cartographers once filled the southern oceans with speculative lands. Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land, imagined as a counterweight to the continents of the north. Sailors spoke of vast territories hidden beneath the horizon. And though those early maps were mostly wrong, they carried an intuition that turned out to be astonishingly close to truth. There really was a great land in the southern seas, just not one visible to the naked eye. Today, Zealandia lies almost entirely submerged, spread across nearly 5 million square kilometers of the Pacific floor. It is 94% underwater, its highest ridges forming the islands we know. But in the silence of the deep, sonar and seismic studies have revealed an unmistakable continental crust, granite, sandstone, and limestone that speak of ancient mountains and long-vanished rivers. It is not an island chain nor a fragment, but a continent in its own right, a continent that simply sank. To stand on a beach in New Zealand is, in a sense, to stand on the last exposed crest of a vanished world. Beneath the waves, the submerged ridges of Zealandia form a vast underwater plateau, draped in sediments and shadow. The continental shelf slopes gently down into darkness, where strange corals and bioluminescent life dwell among the remnants of a drowned landscape. If the oceans were to recede by just a few hundred meters, new coastlines would appear, connecting islands once more, the skeleton of a continent reborn. Zealandia reminds us how easily Earth's skin can shift. Land and sea, permanence and impermanence, are not opposites, but phases of the same slow rhythm. Continents themselves are transient, rising and falling over geological ages, carried by the drifting plates of the planet's crust. Mountains erode into sand. Seafloors are thrust upward into ranges. The world remakes itself, again and again, on a scale so vast that our own histories feel like mere ripples on the surface. And yet, even as the planet transforms, we seek to trace its memory. Scientists now map Zealandia with precision, charting ridges and basins once invisible. From these contours, a ghostly image emerges. River valleys that once cut through green hills, plains that might have supported forests or ferns, volcanic peaks that trembled above the sea. Fossil pollen trapped in sediments tells of temperate forests that flourished when Zealandia still breathed the air. There were once ecosystems here, perhaps even species now unknown to science, buried beneath a kilometer of ocean. The story of Zealandia is not only geological, it is emotional. It speaks to something ancient within us, the sense that the Earth we see is only part of the whole, that there are worlds just beyond reach, veiled by water or time, waiting to be remembered. We are drawn to these hidden lands because they echo our own condition. We, too, are beings of memory and loss, carrying fragments of things that have vanished but not disappeared. When the Maori first settled Aotearoa, the land they called the Long White Cloud, they came to islands that felt immense, yet somehow incomplete, the last peaks of something larger. Their oral traditions speak of a world alive, where mountains and seas converse, and where the line between myth and geology blurs. In their stories, the land itself breathes, shifts, and speaks. In this way, their cosmology feels deeply aligned with what science has since revealed, that the Earth is not a static backdrop, but a living participant in its own unfolding story. It's humbling to imagine that beneath the waves, entire continents can vanish, not through catastrophe, but through time's quiet patience. Zealandia did not fall in fire or flood. It simply sank, inch by inch, over millions of years. Forests faded, coastlines slipped away, and generations passed until the sea had taken nearly everything. Yet even submerged, Zealandia endures. Its hidden mountains shape ocean currents and shelter life on the seafloor. Coral reefs grow on its ridges, whales trace its contours in migration. What seems lost continues to give, a quiet reminder that disappearance is not the end of being. The Earth teaches this endlessly. That loss is transformation. The drowned lands beneath the ocean are not gone. They have become part of the planet's great circulation. Stone becomes sediment, sediment becomes mountain, and every ending folds gently into a beginning. We often imagine lost worlds as tragedy, cities swallowed by water, civilizations erased. Yet Zealandia's story is gentler. It shows that change can be graceful, even necessary. What sinks may still nourish what rises. The planet's memory is vast. Nothing is truly forgotten, only reshaped. Look across the Pacific, and you are gazing upon a hidden continent. Beneath that shimmering surface lies a land that once felt the warmth of the sun and the rhythm of rain, now dreaming in silence, its story carried in currents and tides. Across the earth, this rhythm continues. Continents rise, fold, and fall. Land and sea exchange places in an endless dance. The crust drifts upon the planet's molten heart, and each mountain, trench, and plain is a brief expression of that motion. If time could be seen as a tide rather than a line, we would witness the planet breathing, the Himalayas inching higher, the Atlantic widening, the Pacific shrinking. What seems eternal is only a pause in Earth's movement. Long before us, all land was one, a single supercontinent called Pangaea. Its unity was immense, but temporary. Tension grew beneath it until the crust tore apart, birthing the continents we know today. From that fracture came diversity, new climates, and new life. What looked like destruction was creation, the Earth renewing itself by breaking its boundaries. From every loss, something new begins. Drowned coastlines become coral reefs. Eroded mountains feed fertile plains. The planet recycles its own memory, turning endings into beginnings, a kind of planetary reincarnation. The ground beneath our feet feels solid, yet beneath it lies a restless mantle, slowly churning like a vast ocean of rock. Tectonic plates drift atop it, colliding and separating, writing the story of continents. Volcanoes rise from the seams. Earthquakes ripple through the crust, brief reminders of the power hidden beneath our illusion of stillness. Around the Pacific, the ring of fire marks this restlessness. It encircles Zealandia's submerged rim, a living border of volcanoes and trenches. Here, the Earth's pulse is strong. Islands are born, eroded, reborn again. Creation and destruction reveal themselves as two halves of the same breath. The more we learn about the Earth, the more we see that impermanence is its nature. Mountains crumble, rivers change course, seas rise and fall. Even the air has transformed through the ages, sometimes rich with oxygen, sometimes thick with carbon. The world has reinvented itself countless times, and we are but recent witnesses to its ongoing metamorphosis. Yet impermanence is not tragedy. It is life itself. Without it, there could be no renewal, no evolution. The drifting continents gave rise to the diversity of species. Shifting climates taught humanity to adapt, to imagine, to migrate. Our stories, our civilizations, they rise and fade like tides, leaving behind traces in the sediment of memory. We are not apart from this movement. We are expressions of it. Perhaps this is why the idea of lost worlds stirs us so deeply. We see in them a reflection of ourselves, our fragility, our transience. Names like Atlantis or Lemuria are less about geography than about understanding impermanence. They remind us that even the ground beneath us is temporary. And yet, there is comfort in knowing that nothing is ever truly gone. The stones of fallen cities become the sand of new shores. The ashes of ancient forests feed future roots. Even Zealandia, sleeping beneath the Pacific, continues to shape life above. In this way, the past never disappears. It transforms, joining the great continuity of being. Standing at the edge of the sea, we can almost feel this truth. Waves erase our footprints, yet leave new patterns in their wake. Each tide is a reminder of the ages passing, an endless exchange of loss and renewal. We come to the shore for peace, not because it is still, but because it moves. It reminds us that all things flow. To gaze upon the ocean is to look into deep time, not measured in years, but in the breathing of stone and water. The earth is older than memory, yet forever young in its becoming. So when we think of drowned continents and cities beneath the waves, we are not mourning. We are remembering. Listening to the quiet rhythm of a living world, we hear its truth. That change is the only permanence, and loss the first step toward renewal. If time could be slowed until it stilled, we might see the earth as it truly is, not a map of nations, but a single living organism. Continents drift like cells in motion. Oceans inhale and exhale. Mountains rise and fall. Beneath it all lies the planet's memory, written in stone, in coral, in ice. The earth remembers everything: fire and flood, silence and song. Our myths of lost lands are echoes of real experience, memories carried through time. People have always lived at the edge of change, watching shorelines shift. When seas rose, they told stories of floods and rebirth. When mountains trembled, they spoke of sleeping gods. Through story, humanity learned to see beauty in impermanence. Even now, mystery remains. Beneath the ocean lie mountain ranges greater than the Himalayas, trenches deeper than Everest, rivers that flow beneath the sea. To live on Earth is to dwell in a world still half unseen. Every discovery brings humility. For all our knowledge, we are still children of the tides. The same forces that lifted Zealandia and sank it again still shape our future. The question is not whether Earth will endure. It will. But whether we will learn to move with its rhythm. Perhaps that is what it means to belong here. Not to own the earth, but to move with it, to flow as the rivers do, as the continents do, as life always has. Every wave that erases the shore is also writing it anew. Beauty lives not despite impermanence, but because of it. The ocean does not speak in words, but in pulse, a heartbeat from the planet's core. It whispers of lands it has carried, forests it has buried, islands yet to rise. And if we listen closely, we may hear ourselves in that voice. The part that remembers we are not separate, but part of something vast, alive, and ever-changing. Because everything that has been still is, just in another form, waiting to be remembered.